Yes Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
Chapter 1. Crossing the battlefield. Chen Chen opened his eyes suddenly. He could feel someone dragging him under the armpits and pulling him backwards. Rapid gunshots continued to ring in his ears. Along with the gunshots was the crisp sound of a metal object falling on the concrete floor, and Chen Chen was very familiar with that sound. That was the sound of a grenade falling to the ground. Without any thought, his body suddenly burst out with powerful strength as an instinctive reaction. He jumped up instantly from lying limp on the ground and then slammed down on the ground far away from the grenade. Boom! Almost at the moment he landed, the grenade exploded. The huge shock wave made his whole body numb, and only a sharp buzzing sound was left in his ears. If this was not an offensive grenade, he would have been dead. Chen Chen stumbled a few steps and rushed into a bunker that was obviously built by friendly forces. The friendly soldiers around him dragged him behind the collapsed low wall and shouted at him loudly. But now Chen Chen couldn't hear any sound. He just looked around blankly, unable to figure out where he was. 1 second ago, I was comfortably eating veteran barbecue. Then I closed my eyes due to drunkenness, and when I opened my eyes again, I was already on the battlefield. This was definitely not a dream. There were no grenades in the dream, nor were there soldiers holding Type 81 rifles and firing wildly. There was no doubt that he had passed through, but the question was, where did he pass through? A bullet came through the air and directly broke the cervical vertebra of the comrade who had just pulled Chen Chen into the bunker. He didn't even have time to groan before his head bent to the side at a terrifying 90-degree angle. The blood spurting out of his aorta flew directly onto the leaves above his head, and then dripped onto Chen Chen's face. It's not hot, it's cold. Chen Chen woke up, and his ears finally regained some hearing. He heard a man who looked like a captain on the left shouting to retreat. Looking around, he saw that this extremely sloppy line of defense collapsed instantly under the man's order. Everyone was running back, but they didn't even leave anyone behind to provide cover. With just one glance, Chen Chen concluded that although the people around him were wearing familiar military uniforms, they were definitely not the army he was familiar with. They're not that bad. Seeing that the gunfire outside the bunker was getting more and more frequent, he gave up the idea of figuring out the situation, pulled the Type 81 rifle from his dead comrade, and quickly took off his carrying belt. Afterwards, he changed the bullet, drew the bolt, loaded the chamber, and returned the selector to its original position in one go. Just when the captain had already run a few meters away, he shouted loudly, "Don't fucking run. Take turns to cover." Then, he half knelt behind the cover, first stood up quickly, and then immediately fell to the side. In just a glance, he had locked onto the 3 enemies rushing towards him. Moving 2 steps to the right, Chen Chen gave the enemy a forward shooting range. But just as the first enemy stepped over the obstacle, 2 bullets fired in quick succession accurately penetrated his brain from the side. The top of his head exploded, as if his hat had been knocked off. Chen Chen did not look at the fallen body, but immediately pulled the gun to the right, pulled the trigger, and a short burst of shots directly knocked down the 2 people who were still running. "Don't run. Turn around and shoot to cover," Chen Chen shouted again. He knew that there were only 3 enemies approaching, and as long as the friendly forces turned back to cover him, he could still retreat. But what made him angry was that no one listened to him, even the captain, who was running towards the building in the distance, regardless of anything. Fucking idiot. Chen Chen couldn't help but curse. How could there be such a stupid ally? The building behind us is lower than this bunker. What should I do if you run in? What firepower can you use to cover me? Are you waiting for you to find the stairs to the 2nd floor? But the situation was stronger than him, and he couldn't pull the person back after all, so he had to change his position and look out again. A large number of enemies stopped about 100 meters away, at least 40 or 50 of them. It was a platoon-level battle, and there was no heavy firepower, so Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. If there was a heavy machine gun on the opposite side, it would be wise for him to just raise his hands and surrender. Aiming at the 2 advancing enemy troops, Chen Chen leaned forward again and fired a burst of shots. At a distance of less than 50 meters, he could almost hit whatever he pointed at. The enemy troops in the front immediately fell back. But the 2 men were too far apart horizontally, and while Chen Chen turned his gun, the other man, including other enemy troops in the bunker, had already opened fire. Don't be timid. Being a coward means death. Chen Chen calmly pulled the trigger, and the second man fell to the ground. The bullets from the opposite side hit the sandbags of the bunker. But what surprised Chen Chen was that even the nearest bullet was more than 1 meter away from him. Are you kidding me? The guy holding the gun is a monkey? Suddenly, he wasn't afraid anymore. What the hell do you need fire cover for? Just run. It turns out that I am the clown, and my allies are gaining experience through fighting. Chen Chen took out 2 grenades from the corpse under him. When he took them out, he saw that they still had wooden handles. This thing is retro. Fortunately, the bottom cover had been unscrewed. He pulled the fuse hard and threw it out as soon as smoke appeared. Then, before the grenade exploded, he climbed out of the bunker and ran directly towards the building behind him. At this time, the friendly forces were finally of some use. They either hid behind load-bearing columns or lay on the ground, pointing their guns at the slightly higher bunkers, guarding against the approaching enemies. Chen Chen couldn't help but want to complain again. Shooting from low and high while lying down? Are you fucking crazy? Crouching, and shooting. He yelled as he slithered towards the building, but before he could get close, friendly forces in front of him opened fire. Fuck you. I'm in your range. Still no one listened to him, so he had no choice but to slide on the spot, suddenly turned over, spread his legs, and opened fire in a lying position. 2 shots hit 1 enemy at a time, and the enemy who had crossed the cover fell to the ground without even raising his gun. Without even bothering to look at the captain's surprised look, he turned over again, took a few steps over the friendly soldiers who were still lying on the ground, and rushed into the room on the first floor of the building. What are you waiting for? Come in. Chen Chen was almost speechless at the military quality of these friendly troops. There was a large open area in front of the building. They had already provided cover, but they didn't retreat inside. Were they waiting for a feast? Hearing his shout, the few soldiers who stayed outside woke up as if from a dream and stumbled into the room. The captain gave the order after the fact, and Chen Chen rushed over and dragged him to a corner far away from the window, shouting into his ear, "Where the hell is this?" The captain was confused. He looked at Chen Chen and answered the question irrelevantly. "Reinforcements. Reinforcements are not coming. No, we've been tricked. The reinforcements won't come. We're just cannon fodder." Chen Chen, a retired member of a certain brigade, a shareholder of Veteran Barbecue, age 35, married but childless, returned to 18 and crossed northern Myanmar. After retreating into the building, Chen Chen finally figured out his situation as he listened to the captain's incoherent narration and his memories gradually merged in his mind. The place where he is now is indeed not that country, and the people around him are indeed not that army. So here comes a question. In this world, where is the army that is most like them, but not like them? The one who said that Tanzania should be taken out and shot. It is Kokong. It is Wa State. Yes, this is the legendary northern Myanmar, and the people around him are the Kokong Allied Army. The time was of course 2009, and the opponent was of course the Burmese government army. What a guy. He actually caught up with the starting point of the great unrest in northern Myanmar. What's even more unfortunate is that he was not only a member of the Kokong Allied forces, but also one of the ones thrown to the front line. What's even more unfortunate is that not only was he thrown to the front line, but he actually fought with the 812th Division. What the hell? The 812th Division would come to support him. It would be strange. That was by Swaching's personal soldiers. They wished that the Allied forces around them, who followed Peng Jiaxing, would die quickly. Isn't Wu Sangue in northern Myanmar called that for nothing? The captain was still chattering on and on about nonsense like there will be no support and they won't come. Chen Chen took a deep breath, rushed forward and slapped him. Bah! The crisp sound of the slap even drowned out the sound of gunfire outside. The captain, or should I say the company commander, stood there in a daze, finally giving Chen Chen a chance to speak. "Stop talking nonsense. Pull the people back and retreat to the south side of the building. Go upstairs and spread out the defense. They don't have heavy weapons. Use CQB with them. What are you fighting for?" The company commander was stunned for 2 seconds, and then he shouted loudly, as if he had an emotional outburst. "Why are you still fighting? No one will come. There are more than 40 of us, and only a dozen of us are left. Run. Escape for your lives. You kill someone. You are so powerful. Can you kill them all? The ones on the other side are the Burmese army. They are trained Burmese army. How do you fight? Tell me how to fight. I'm telling you now." Chen Chen took a deep breath. The more desperate the situation was, the calmer he became. "I said, play CQB. Fight them indoors. I repeat, they have no heavy weapons." Chen Chen's voice also became louder, and this shout finally brought the company commander back to his senses. He stared at Chen Chen blankly, as if he was looking at a stranger. "From now on, I'll be in charge." Without further ado, Chen Chen directly deprived the company commander of his command authority. He had just proved himself with a 7-0 record. Even if those outside the bunker could not see it, it was still 5-0. Therefore, none of the surviving friendly forces objected. They knew very well that they could not run away. The Burmese soldiers had no legs or something, so they could only hold on and wait for help. If they wanted to survive, they had better listen to the person who killed the most enemies. "Everyone go upstairs, quickly." Chen Chen stopped talking nonsense and rushed out of the north room first. Only then did he realize that this place was actually a teaching building. More beneficial. The classroom has a large space, and the damage from explosives is reduced, but the density of shelters remains the same. In CQB combat, it can almost be said to be the best home ground for the defender. After running for more than 10 meters along the corridor, the only staircase appeared in front of them. The friendly soldiers following behind them went up all the way, but in the end, 2 of them were caught by Chen Chen. "Guard the staircase entrance, go to the classroom opposite, open the door, and shoot if anyone comes. Go upstairs, turn the corner, and wait for the classroom to open fire. Then shoot from the corner railing." "Yes, squat right here." Chen Chen quickly arranged a crossfire. The 2 people who were called hesitated for a moment, but still took up their positions according to Chen Chen's arrangement. Chen Chen felt mixed emotions as he watched the young man enter the classroom opposite the stairs. He's not the focus, he's just a decoy. In fact, the person at the corner of the stairs is also a bait. Chen Chen knows their fighting qualities and also knows that they can only be used as consumables. Chen Chen will accompany them, and they will attract the first wave of firepower for Chen Chen. After they fall, Chen Chen will continue to retreat to the next firing point. He relied on his marksmanship to block the enemy step by step and killed little by little those who dared to come in. There is no other solution. In 3 minutes, Chen Chen completed the reconnaissance of the upper floor and arranged all the firing points. At this time, looking out the window, the enemy had crossed the initial line of defense and began to advance towards the building. From time to time, they would fire a few shots at the windows, but of course there would be no return fire. All firing points are far away from windows, completely avoiding the risk of being attacked from both inside and outside. With such an arrangement, even if the other side really took out a heavy machine gun, it would not be possible to cause effective casualties. At the last moment, Chen Chen rushed to the stairwell on the first floor. He first looked at the friendly soldier in the classroom, then squatted beside the soldier guarding the corner of the stairs, patted his shoulder, and said, "Don't be afraid. Fear means death. Throw the grenade as soon as the gun sounds. Don't wait." Seeing the trembling soldier nod, Chen Chen slowly retreated to the first floor platform and hid behind the wall of the stairwell, with the muzzle of his gun pointing in the same direction as the soldier. Then he unscrewed the back covers of 3 grenades. As soon as the gun sounds, as long as the Burmese army rushes forward, these 3 grenades will be thrown out regardless of whether the friendly soldiers fall or not. It's cruel, but if no one dies, no one can live. At this time, the Burmese army had already rushed into the teaching building. They shouted and fired, and their combat skills were not much better than those of the Allied forces around them. The sound was getting closer and closer, and finally came to the stairs. Bang, bang, bang. A sudden gunshot rang out, followed by fierce counterattacks and intensive curses, mixed in with the hissing sound of burning after the fuse was pulled, the crisp sound of grenades falling to the ground, the clinking sound of stray bullets hitting the railings, and the angry roars of the soldiers. Chaos began and ended as the grenade exploded. The shock wave of the explosion inside the room temporarily blocked everyone's hearing. The Burmese soldiers who were firing at the classroom ignored the firepower at the stairs. The soldier forgot Chen Chen's order and rushed to the platform at the corner of the first staircase, firing wildly at the bottom. After firing a magazine, the soldier excitedly shouted to Chen Chen, who had just walked down the stairs. "Beat him to death! I beat him to death! Fight him off!" Before he could finish his words, a series of bullets pierced his body. Chen Chen, who was hiding on the stairs, fired from the gap between the 2 stairs and killed the 2 enemies who killed the soldier. Then, without any hesitation, Chen Chen pulled the fuse and dropped a grenade. He waited patiently for the grenade to explode, and after it exploded and the enemy reorganized their charge, he threw another grenade up the stairs. But this one didn't fire. The enemies crowded around and subconsciously turned around to flee. But Chen Chen calmly pulled the last grenade, counted silently, rushed to the corner of the stairs, and threw it towards the wall of the stairwell on the first floor. A perfect shot into the goal. The cue ball. No, the grenade bounced towards the first floor corridor. There are at least 5 enemies crowded there. Airburst. When Chen Chen was practicing CQB in the past, he often said one thing to his players, which was, "Your cornering technique is too poor." But now, he truly saw what it meant to have poor cornering skills. No, it's not bad. It's not there at all. 1 stairwell, 1 crossfire, and 5 grenades took at least 11 lives. The Burmese army platoon that had defeated his company had lost more than a quarter of its soldiers. Such results made Chen Chen a little dazed. He even began to doubt whether his arrangements were necessary. If the opponent is so bad, he should just stop thinking about dying and hide in a corridor, using the 3-stage attack technique. The opponent might even line up to die, right? But no matter how much he thought about it, he would definitely not do that. After the brief exchange of fire in the stairwell, he immediately rushed to the 3rd floor. That's right, there is no one on the 2nd floor. This is a psychological tactic. Having just experienced the tragic casualties on the 1st floor, and then using the empty city strategy on the 2nd floor, by the time they searched the 3rd floor, their concentration and vigilance, which had just been raised, had been worn away again. Taking action at this time, one can often achieve rich results. War is all about haggling, and CQB is even more so. But on the 3rd floor, the firepower point designed by Chen Chen was different from that on the 1st floor. There was no one on the stairs and no one in the classroom opposite the stairs. The only defensive measure was a trip mine. Their real nightmare would come when the enemy entered the corridor sandwiched between the 2 classrooms on the left and right. 2 people in a classroom, crossfire at an angle. After they open fire, 2 more people behind the 3 overturned bookshelves at the end of the corridor will open fire at the same time. Then, the last 2 people stationed upstairs will rush down and reap the enemy from behind. Of course, Chen Chen was one of the 2 people harvested. He is definitely not afraid of death, because the position he chose is actually the most dangerous. Needless to say, there are many natural shelters in the classroom, so our side's shooting range is wide, while the enemy's shooting range is narrow. The firing point at the end of the corridor is blocked by books. Yes, stacked books can block 7.62mm bullets. Knowledge is powered. There were only 2 people on the stairs who took the back road. There was absolutely no cover. The only thing they could do was one thing. Use the fastest and most fierce firepower to knock down all enemies in front of you. Either the enemy dies or you die. Chen Chen's heart was beating violently, not because of nervousness, but the result of the crazy secretion of adrenaline. The company commander at the side finally regained some of his instincts as a warrior. Although he was trembling all over, he still squatted firmly beside Chen Chen, with no intention of running away. Don't be nervous, relax. After the first round, they will take at least a few minutes to attack again. I'm not nervous. The company commander was giving himself a psychological hint. A very useful psychological hint. His hands really slowly stabilized and his breathing slowed down. 5 minutes later, there were slight footsteps coming from downstairs. This time, the enemy wasn't stupid enough to open fire, but their noise was still a little too loud. A few seconds later, the sound of a grenade explosion was heard downstairs. The company commander's body trembled, and Chen Chen held his shoulder. Wait a little longer. Next, there was an explosion every few seconds and the whole building was shaking, but what surprised Chen Chen was that the 6 people downstairs actually listened to him and did not shoot. Curses began to be uttered, and the enemy began to let down their guard. The footsteps were getting closer and closer, and they started going up to the 3rd floor. The thunder did not go off, which is normal. The sound of grenade explosions also stopped. This building has 6 floors in total, and they probably wanted to save some for cleaning the upper floors. After all, if there was no one on the 2nd floor, how could there be anyone on the 3rd floor? They should have all gone to the 6th floor or the rooftop, right? The narrow exits, there would be the best place for an ambush. This is probably what the enemy thought. So after they entered the corridor, they immediately began to pay for their mistakes. Intensive gunfire rang out, and there was no way to manage ammunition at this time. Chen Chen did not hesitate and rushed to the stairs immediately. The Type 81 rifle has a capacity of 30 rounds of ammunition. Our squad doesn't even have a light machine gun, and the firepower of the friendly forces downstairs can only last for 10 seconds at most. He only has 10 seconds. Go downstairs, show up, shoot, and dig your ass. The first people Chen Chen cleared out were the 3 people who retreated to the stairwell. After knocking them down with a long burst of fire, he threw the only Type 86 handleless grenade in his hand, which was the only one in the team, down. Then he dodged into the classroom across the corridor to avoid the killing range of the shrapnel, and then stuck his head out at the moment when the friendly forces behind the bookshelf stopped firing and reloaded. Fully automatic, full fire. Once the bullets are used up, throw the gun away and replace it with another gun you stole from the soldier's corpse. In just 10 seconds, the corridor was filled with corpses. At least 15 bodies. Don't stop, follow me, Chen Chen shouted loudly. The survivor at the end of the corridor ran over first, and the last person in the classroom who survived the intensive explosions of enemy grenades also followed in a daze. The Burmese troops downstairs had begun to retreat, but Chen Chen still adhered to the basic principles of CQB. So when he rushed out the door, he only saw the backs of the Burmese troops fleeing towards the bunker. Don't let any of them go, he shouted again. Gunshots rang out beside him, and Chen Chen fired calmly. His thoughts even began to wander. How many casualties does it take for an army to start fleeing to be considered elite? This Burmese platoon only started fleeing after more than half of them were killed. Is that considered elite? What about your own row? 3/4 of our troops died, but we still suffered 6 to 30 casualties. Well, the elite among the elite. After dark, the first reinforcements finally arrived. Ming Xuechang, a trusted general under by Suacheng, personally led a team to collect the bodies. He knew that in this battle, no one on the Allied side would survive. Because it was he who leaked the intelligence to the Burmese mountain troops, it was he who personally planned the siege, and it was he who issued the order no support allowed unless the situation is clear. Of course, he also regretted the sacrifice of those good guys, but who made them join the wrong team? There is no way. Military power can never defeat justice. Exchange your lives for a bright future. Rest in peace. Ming Xuechang took a deep breath and 2 tears came out of his eyes. They were trapped in this building? Did anyone survive? I don't know. We just arrived and didn't have time to check. But there shouldn't be any. The Burmese army has withdrawn. I guess it's over. Good. Ming Xuechang paused for a moment and continued. We must treat their families well and not be greedy for the subsidies. We must be good people in this matter and put the responsibility on the Peng family. Also, there should be some dead bodies on the Burmese side. These are all outside. Our soldiers are really good. They were able to kill so many enemies. But you should still arrange for someone to personally send the bodies back from Myanmar. As he spoke, Ming Xuechang strode into the building. The private soldiers around held flashlights and illuminated the hall of the teaching building. Then Ming Xuechang stood there in a daze. There were corpses all over the ground. Behind the corpse, there were several people squatting, standing, or sitting, and their eyes looked like they wanted to eat people. Chen Chen couldn't stay in this shabby ally army for even a day. After returning from the battlefield, they were treated like heroes, and by Suacheng even personally came forward to commend the company commander. But any discerning person can see that this so-called reward is just a perfunctory act. After winning a battle, they didn't give him a promotion or money, only a few words of praise, and didn't even hold a celebration party. Is this a reward? This is clearly an attempt to block the news. What's more serious is that the company Chen Chen and his colleagues are in has not yet recruited any new members, nor has it shown any intention of transferring them to other companies. They just throw you into the barracks and keep you busy, while they also have to arrange other troops to watch over you. The Allied forces who had not read history and could barely read might not understand what this meant, but Chen Chen knew it very well. This is the time to kill the donkey, but the reason they haven't done it yet is because they haven't figured out how to kill the donkey. Should I send it to the butcher, or kill it myself? If I kill it myself, do I kill it with one knife, or do I find a way to slowly bleed it? This is not an easy decision to make, and the benefits must be distributed well. Chen Chen knew that this was his only chance. If he couldn't seize this window of opportunity to escape, then he would most likely not be able to leave. So, on a night when the defenses were lax, he quietly gathered all 4 survivors. At this time, he already knew that the company commander's surname was Shur, and his name was Shur Dakai. Of course, he had nothing to do with the famous Shur Dakai. On the contrary, among the soldiers Chen Chen had dealt with, Shur Dakai was considered to be a rather cowardly and stupid one. When he stood in front of Shur Dakai and proposed to run away with his brothers, Shur Dakai's reaction was one of horror. Why are you running away? Why are you thinking of running away? Are you going to betray me? I'll pretend you never said that. Don't ever say it again. This must be an accident. The commander won't play with our lives casually. Didn't he explain that to us? You are a very good shooter. You will definitely be successful in the future. Didn't General Bai praise you this time? If the situation wasn't so tense, he would have commended you. Don't worry, just wait a little longer. Chen Chen rolled his eyes and did not blame Shur Dake for his ignorance. What are you waiting for? Don't you have any idea of the current situation? We have been abandoned. We have been abandoned. The person who should have died is alive. Do you know how much trouble this will cause to the higher-ups? No. We are all war heroes. How could they do that? Captain, it's not us, it's Chen Chen. Someone interrupted Shur Dakai. That's right. Without him, none of us would have survived. The Burmese army was determined to kill us all. This is not right in itself. Do you really think this is your achievement? General Bai just chose you and pushed you out. The credit should belong to Chen Chen. Chen Chen, I'll go with you. I'm leaving too. Captain, let's go. If Chen Chen can save us, he will never harm us. The other 2 members of the 4-man team, except Shur Dakai and Chen Chen, had already been impressed by Chen Chen. Not only because his marksmanship far exceeded the average level of the Allied forces, But more importantly, he showed calmness, alertness, and military qualities that definitely did not belong to this land in a deadly situation. They even discussed it privately and felt that with Chen Chen's ability, he was qualified to be a brigade commander, let alone a company commander. Therefore, they had no intention of questioning Chen Chen's decision at all. Others expressed their opinions one after another, and Sure Dakai became visibly panicked. He wanted to give some advice, but found that no one cared about his opinion. So he had to use his last resort. Think about your family. What will happen to them if you run away? For a moment, everyone was stunned. Yes, except Chen Chen, all the other four have families and parents. If they deserted, it is conceivable that Bai Suoqing would take revenge on their families. This seems to be a dilemma, at least in many movies. It will be promoted as the core of the conflict. But in Chen Chen's opinion, it is not. He said calmly, if you stay here, you will be exchanging your life for the lives of your family members. If one of you dies, you will suffer the loss in silence. Run away. If he really dares to retaliate, then we will find an opportunity to fight back. Blood debt must be paid with blood. There is no loss or gain. If they don't dare to retaliate, then we win. Choose. Those who don't want to leave can stay. I won't tell you where I'm going, so don't report it without thinking. Now vote. As soon as he finished speaking, the other two immediately raised their hands. Chen Chen is right. If I leave, at least I'll have a chance to take revenge. If I stay here, my death will be in vain. I must leave. Besides, my father is not someone you can easily mess with. If you want to take revenge on him, you'll have to pay at least a few people. That's right. I can't care less. I have to leave first, then I can find a way to get them out. Everyone had a consensus, and only Sure Dakai was left. Chen Chen looked at him and said, you have no choice. Sure Dakai sighed and replied, you guys go away. I won't tell anyone. I'll just pretend I didn't see it. Chen Chen shook his head. No, the conditions I just mentioned are not directed at you. I can trust them, but I can't trust you. We are all leaving you alone. In other words, if you don't leave, you will die. Chen Chen's heart was as cold as a knife used to kill fish. He would never let Sure Dakai, the capitulator, escape from his sight. Yes, there was a chance that he meant what he said now. But what about after he left? How many hours could he hold on? He might leak the secret before he even ran out of the barracks. Sure Dakai looked at Chen Chen in astonishment and finally nodded. Then let's go. The plan was drawn up, and late the next night, the four men crossed most of the camp and stole the weapons they needed from the armory. Because Kokong and the Myanmar army were in a state of war at that time, the management of guns and weapons was relaxed by more than one level, so their actions encountered little resistance. The process was like child's play. One person attracted the warehouse manager's attention. Another knocked him unconscious from behind, and then sat in the warehouse manager's seat before the patrolling guard came over. When the guard asked, he said that the warehouse manager had gone to the toilet and would be back soon. The key point is that this is really the best reason, because the warehouse manager will really do this. Be brave allies with such quality. If you don't lose, who will? Chen Chen didn't have time to sigh. He was surprised to find that there were two brand new SVDs in this shabby armory. That's right, it's SVD, not a copy of the 79 sniper rifle. The original SVD is much more accurate than the 79 sniper rifle, mainly because it uses special 7N1 and 7N14 bullets. Although they are both 7.62mm bullets, compared with ordinary AR bullets, this type of bullet can drastically reduce the shooting dispersion of the SVD. Chen Chen didn't know who these two guns belonged to or why they appeared here, but there was no doubt that he had to take them away. Although he failed to find special spare ammunition at the scene, he felt that he would not have many opportunities for ultra-long-range sniping. Most battles would be limited to a few hundred meters, so ordinary AR bullets would be enough. In northern Myanmar today, whether it is Type 53, Type 58, or PKM, they are all very common. It is not difficult to find some AR bullets, and there is no need to worry about running out of ammunition. After taking it apart and quickly putting it on his back, Chen Chen searched through all the boxes and cabinets. Unfortunately, he didn't find any special supply ammunition, but I couldn't ask for more. In 10 minutes, everyone's backpacks were filled with ammunition and grenades, and they also took a few sets of brand new individual communication systems, throat microphones. They were also good stuff. Looking at the Russian text on it, Chen Chen knew where the two SVDs came from. Have you finished taking them all? I've got it. The others answered in a low voice. Then let's go. After helping the warehouse manager lie down on his seat, the group evacuated along the same route. After reaching the center of the camp, they took advantage of the time when the guards were changing shifts to escape from the barracks safely. The Allied Army's barracks were not closed-off management. Quite a few soldiers had to farm, sell small commodities, and go to the mines when they were not fighting. How could closed-off management work? Therefore, even if Bai Suoqing specifically instructed strict supervision, it was really no difficulty for Chen Chen, an old special warfare expert who was proficient in infiltration and counterinfiltration. Half an hour later, they had already run 2 kilometers in the woods, and the military camp behind them finally became chaotic. Alarms, gunshots, and roars rang out, and lights went up into the sky. Sure Dakai followed Chen Chen worriedly and asked, "We've been discovered. Where are we going now? What are we going to do?" Chen Chen sighed. "What can we do? We have no money and no identity, so it's impossible for us to cross the border to China. I can't do anything, but at least I have to run out of the courage first." After a brief pause, he continued, "But at least we still have guns. Let's go to Shan State first, to Munka, and become mercenaries." Munka is not a small village. In fact, Munka is an important city and an important stronghold in the Shan State Special Region. It is located at the junction of Shan State and Hua State. To the north is Monpao, to the east is Manyang, and to the south is Kingtung. King Tung is the last checkpoint for northern Myanmar to enter the core area of the Golden Triangle. Among them, Mingyang is under the jurisdiction of the 468th Brigade of Hua State and is Li Aishu's territory. Mingbao belongs to the 418th Brigade, which has the 917th Detachment under its command. It is the core defense force of Bangkok. The brigade commander is Bao Yongjin, a close confidant of Commander Bao. Jingdong is controlled by the Myanmar government army, but their infiltration range is not limited to Jingdong. Their combat battalions and special operations forces are deployed in all surrounding areas. They even established a permanent military camp near Mungka. As for Mungka itself, it is under the jurisdiction of the 7th Brigade of Northern Shan State, but it does not only belong to the Shan State Alliance Army, because it is also within the sphere of influence of the Northern Mofa militia. To put it simply, this is a place that has been warred on all sides. However, precisely because of its special geographical location, a delicate balance has been achieved between the various forces, making it a key transit station for freight and personnel transportation in the entire northern Myanmar region. As we all know, as long as it is a hub area, there will be chaos. Not to mention, the items being transported here are all illegal items that absolutely cannot be put on paper. Therefore, although Mungka is not as notorious for online fraud as Mayawati and Kokong in later generations, the level of chaos beneath its calm surface is definitely not comparable to other places. But Chen Chen is not afraid of chaos, because chaos is their best cover. After spending 3 full days, covering a straight line distance of 200 kilometers, and changing various means of transportation, Chen Chen finally arrived in Mungka with his 3 teammates. They took off their military uniforms, put on t-shirts and trousers prepared on the road, wrapped their overly conspicuous SVDs with cloth, put on the 81-bar saddles that matched their status, and checked into an inconspicuous hotel. There are 2 rooms, 2 people in one, just right for taking turns on guard. He hid the 2 SVDs that were not in use at the moment and all the extra equipment under the bed. This was certainly not completely safe, but there was no better way at the moment. Fortunately, the Northern Shan State Army's military control in Mongka is very strict. The security brigade patrols everywhere, and almost all hotels are owned by the Military Control Commission, so there is no need to worry too much about theft or robbery. As for being discovered by the room service staff, forget it, there is no such thing in a 50 renminbi per night hotel. After everything was settled, Chen Chen called everyone together and gathered in his room for a meeting. After several days of running around, Chen Chen has already had a basic understanding of the others. In addition to Shirdakkai, the other 2 comrades are named Li Bang and Bao Chi. Li Bang is a short, dark-skinned man who just turned 20 this year. Like his original self, Chen Chen, he joined the Kokong Allied Army just to make a living. Bao Chi respected his father's wishes. In 1984, his father worked with Bao Yoxiang in the National Democratic Front. He always felt that Kokong and Hua State were just brothers fighting each other, and he also hoped that one day he could restore the glory of northern Myanmar. Therefore, he was very determined about his son joining the army. Such a background also created the gap in military quality between Li Bang and Bao Chi. If Li Bang was really just better than a monkey that could shoot a gun and his survival was purely due to luck, then Bao Chi at least had some skills. At least when the enemy concentrated their fire on him, he knew to lie down and find cover to hide. Are we really going to be mercenaries? Before Chen Chen could speak, Shirdakkai asked first. He has always been skeptical about the idea of mercenaries, thinking that those people are thugs who are not worthy of being on the stage. But Chen Chen doesn't think so. It sounds like the Kokong Allied forces are not mercenaries. They have no formal military training, they just go to work for a salary. And if they can shoot, they are thrown into the battlefield. Aren't they just the lowest level cannon fodder mercenaries? Instead of fighting them, it's better to fight the rich boss. If I can make a name for myself, earn enough money, and have a good identity, I will have the opportunity to completely escape from this chaotic northern Myanmar and return to my true homeland. So he answered firmly, yes, I will go. There must be a way to get there. Are we just going to go out and ask on the street? Besides, they may not necessarily want us. We are. Shirdakkai didn't finish his words, but everyone understood that what he wanted to say was, we don't know how to fight. Chen Chen sighed and explained, it doesn't matter whether there will be a war or not. There are large and small gun groups everywhere in Mungka. As long as you have a gun, it won't be difficult to make a living. Besides, fighting here is not necessarily more dangerous than Kokong. At least we can choose our own missions. Can I choose it myself? Shirdakkai was shocked. Yes, some of the big gun groups here have a lot of resources. They will receive a variety of tasks. Some tasks are not cost-effective for them, so they will be subcontracted to smaller gun groups. Like the Wood Ghost, you know? The largest rifle regiment in Mungka was mainly composed of Kun Sa's former Montai army. After being dispersed by the Hua State, they fled from the Dadwan River and established the Mugawe Rifle Regiment. In the past few years, Mugawe has developed very well. It has established connections with the Northern Shan State military and has begun to slowly transform from a mercenary group to a PMC. It is now called Wanfeng Group and mainly engages in security and freight business. Therefore, they no longer do some small tasks. This is our chance. As long as we can pass their assessment, take on 1 or 2 missions, and survive, we will be able to gain a foothold in Mungka. Hearing his words, Li Bang and Bao Chi nodded together. I think it's feasible. We can make some money by fighting a war. At least it's better than the Allied forces. They had simple minds, and when they heard Chen Chen say that it was profitable, they didn't think too much about it. But Shirdakkai is different. Although he is cowardly and sometimes stupid, he is definitely not stupid. He looked at Chen Chen with scrutinizing eyes and asked tentatively, how do you know these things? How do I know? Chen Chen sighed. I can't tell you that I saw this information by chance in the intelligence when I participated in the 4-nation joint operation in my previous life. Shirdakkai obviously didn't need to know this. So Chen Chen simply replied, Go online more and read the news more. There's everything on there? Kai opened his mouth wide. Ah, read the news online? Ah, maybe I should give it a try. Having dispelled the doubts of several people, Chen Chen was unwilling to waste any more time. After all, they didn't have much money left. The four of them only had a little over 6,000 renminbi, which was enough to last them for long. I have to find money quickly. Don't say so much. We will go to Muguay later and talk to their people first. Maybe we'll be lucky and get the mission today if we go there. Muguay's door was easier to enter than Chen Chen had imagined, because Muguay's headquarters itself was a large casino, Wanfeng Casino. As soon as you enter the door, you will see the hall for individual customers, where a large group of people are crowded together gambling and playing all kinds of games. This kind of scene has long been commonplace in Kokong. No one in the four-member team was interested, and no one even took the mud codes that the code stacker offered to them. Chen Chen was very satisfied with the performance of the three people. In fact, at that moment just now, he had thought that if anyone showed interest in gambling, he would have to find an excuse to kick that person out. On the one hand, of course, it was because of the three bottom lines of prostitution, gambling, and drugs. On the other hand, he always felt that life was already a super large casino. If he had to use the luck he had accumulated with great difficulty in a small casino, what difference would that make him a fool? Brother Chen, where can we find tasks? Bao Qi moved closer to Chen Chen and asked in a low voice. Looking at his serious expression, Chen Chen couldn't help but want to laugh. From the moment they left the house, Bao Qi and Li Bang were like possessed actors, their every move imitating the bodyguards and henchmen of the big bosses in the movies, which made him a little uncomfortable. But then again, after all, the two of them had just seen blood on the battlefield with me, so their temperaments were different when they stood there, and at first glance, they looked quite similar. It's definitely not on the first floor anyway. Why not go to the VIP lounge on the second floor and ask? Chen Chen opened his mouth to answer. Just go straight there like that? Sure, Kai asked hesitantly. If you're doing business, you can't not let people ask. Although we have no connections, we haven't provoked anyone. It's okay to ask more questions. Chen Chen looked carefree as he led the four people past the gambling tables. He ignored the code settler's cold stares and went straight up to the second floor. He politely greeted the security guard and explained his purpose. The security guard took out the intercom and verified the identity of the front desk staff. He then carefully inquired about the weapons that the four people had deposited at the front desk. He finally nodded and took the four people into the office of the person in charge of task subcontracting. It went smoothly, as it should have. The person in charge was a fat man with a simple and honest look. When he saw Chen Chen and the other three coming in, he stood up and greeted them with a smile, without saying much. Welcome, welcome. Sir, you came here on your own, right? Have you worked with us before? The fat man asked. This sentence is a test, and also a demonstration. His meaning was very clear, which was to tell Chen Chen that I've been watching you since you entered the door, so don't try to play tricks on me. I've heard from the old team leader about things in Dakali before, but he left some time ago, so we have to work on our own. It's presumptuous of me to come here today. I hope the boss can give me something to eat. Facing the fat man's smiling but dagger-hiding attitude, Chen Chen spoke in a calm tone, neither humble nor arrogant, and lied fluently, which made Bao Qi secretly admire him. What is a chief? This is a chief. Compared to others, Kai is really good at both fighting and doing things. Forget it, he's the company commander after all, so we can't complain too much. He was still sighing, but the fat man had already asked. Which leader is it? If you are familiar with him, we can discuss it and let you act on your own. But if you are not familiar with it, you can only go to the shooting range to test the gun first, and do it with our brothers. Careful and professional. The fat man expressed his meaning very clearly. That is, if it was a team of experienced and familiar people, then he could directly subcontract the task and let Chen Chen do it himself. If you are not famous, just go to the shooting range and try your luck. If you can pass the test, you can join Mu Gui's own gun group. If you can't pass, then the mountains are high and the road is long, and we'll see each other again. But the problem is that Chen Chen's team has neither the reputation to get the mission directly, nor the strength to pass the assessment. To tell a joke, the assessment requirements for the mercenaries in northern Myanmar are much higher than those of the regular army of various armed forces. Even if you can pass it, others can't. It's very uncomfortable. Chen Chen frowned. He really wanted to find a reason to scare the fat man. But after hesitating for a moment, he decided to be frank. He made up a name at random and answered. It was Chao Ying's army. They were defeated long ago. I guess they didn't have any cooperation with the boss. I understand what you mean, but it is not our intention to join the Wood Ghost directly. So we want to ask, are there any missions that have no consequences and that a group like ours can take on? Wealth and honor are sought through risk. We are not afraid of death, so we just want to give it one last try. After saying this, Chen Chen basically gave Fatty his whole truth. A task without consequences means that the employer does not have to consider the success or failure of the task and can try and fail as much as he wants. No matter the process, if you fail to do it, you will die, but if you succeed, you will be paid. Then you can only make a bounty. The fat man's expression remained unchanged, perfectly demonstrating the professionalism of Wanfeng Group in the transformation process, and also reflecting the basic qualities and basic courtesy that a service staff should possess. What are the bounties? Chen Chen continued to ask. That's a lot. The fat man sat back on the sofa and listed them one by one. Li Aishu, Bao Yongxiang, Peng Jiaxing by Suaching. The list of those who died. The mopping up list includes the Wanxingshan camp in Mofa, the Mengku camp of the Myanmar army, and the Mengping camp in Hua State. Daluo, Badabulin, Samyampo, Nangdu. Route list for these points. They have been up for 2 or 3 years, and no one has taken them down yet. These are considered public bounties. If you want, I can give you a list directly. Do you need it? Chen Chen fell silent. What the hell are these tasks? No wonder there is a public bounty. Assassinating Bao Yongxiang and Peng Jiaxing? Capture a military camp? Relatively speaking, the easiest task is to route a few locations. But the problem is that those points are key border control points, and it would be a miracle if they can get through. But it seems that now, they have no other choice. Things have come to this point, let's take a look first. Then I'll trouble the boss to help us make a list. No problem. Without any pause, the fat man took out a few thin A4 papers stapled to everything from the drawer under the table. Chen Chen glanced over and saw that he had another box of the same material. It seems that this is not the first time he has encountered this situation. Thank you. After expressing their thanks, the four of them said goodbye and left. The fat man professionally saw them off to the door, but when he turned around, Chen Chen keenly noticed a hint of disdain on his face. It's so normal. It is normal for a mercenary group to be looked down upon before it achieves any results. After all, he didn't know the past battle records of the four people on his side, and Chen Chen would never take the initiative to tell them. After walking out of the door of Wanfeng Hotel, Chen Chen immediately opened the bounty list given by the fat man. Just as Fatty said at the beginning, all the tasks above are really the kind that are basically impossible to complete. The other three people felt a little disappointed. Today's setbacks made them deeply realize that being a mercenary is not that easy. Forget about whether you can do it or not. You can't even get any missions, okay? And sure, Dakai has already started to persuade people to quit. How about we stop being mercenaries? Sell the guns and start a small business here? I used to sell fruit and it was quite profitable. When I have enough money in the future, I can open a Miyajia supermarket. Stop talking. Before Chen Chen could speak, Bao Qi interrupted Dakai. What are you thinking about? Have you forgotten that our family is still in Kokong? When can we bring them over to sell fruit? If something happens to them, how can we avenge them if we don't become mercenaries? I told you not to come. Don't come or you'll die. Who knows? Stop talking. Chen Chen finally spoke. What's there to argue about? Come over here and take a look at this first. I found a bounty, and with the four of us, we might be able to pull it off. The bounty that Chen Chen had his eyes on was actually not simple. There was a reason why no one took it up and no one took it down. The main reason is that the cost and benefits are not proportional. This order is a raid order with a reward of only 10,000 US dollars, but the scale of the mission is huge. Clear out a group of armed elements on Wananai Mountain, or the bandit camp. According to the intelligence given along with the bounty, the total strength of the Wananai bandit camp is about 20 people. They do not belong to any force, but are a group of gunmen who were driven out from the vicinity of Munka by the Northern Shan State Army, and whose way was blocked by the Burmese army in the Minku camp. For the time being, they make a living by very primitive means of highway robbery and kidnapping, and their main customers are ordinary vehicles on the Wanai Tao and Dongta transportation lines. Yes, they dare not take action against anyone with a background, because that would really bring about fatal disaster. So, the ordinary villagers around were in trouble. They wanted to resist, but no matter how weak Wan Hinai was, he still had 20 guns and 20 men, so it was almost impossible to defeat them. As for seeking help from the military and other major forces, come on, these bandits didn't bother them. So who would care? So they had to offer a reward, a pitiful $10,000 reward. Perhaps they knew that the money was too little. So they put forward an additional condition, which is, if the bandits in Wananai can be eliminated, Minglang Buddhist Temple will hold a free prayer for the victims. Given these conditions, it would be a miracle if anyone would go to take the job. Even for a small group like Chen Chen's, theoretically speaking, if they really try to take on Bao Yongxiang or Bai Suaching, the cost effectiveness would be higher than fighting Wan Hino. At least they still have 2 SVDs. However, Chen Chen's thinking is different. He thinks he can do something that others think he can't do. He first spent 10 yuan to borrow a computer with internet access at the front desk, found a nearby topographic map, and roughly copied it. Then took the map back to the room and started working on it. Seeing the battlefield through the blueprints was an exam he had to pass in the military topography class in his previous life, so it didn't seem difficult at all at this moment. In just a few minutes, he already had a basic understanding of the Wananai camp and the surrounding terrain in his mind. But of course, formulating a battle plan is not that simple. Just as he was deep in thought, Dakai came to persuade him to back out. Are we really going to fight Waninoi? Look at the information on the bounty. They have quite a lot of people. Besides, we have never fought this kind of war before. How can we attack their village with only a few guns and grenades? Why not just forget it? Even if we want to be mercenaries, we have to find a better mission. We can't just go and die. As soon as he said this, even Li Bang and Bao Qi, who had always stood firmly on Chen Chen's side, became a little hesitant. After all, judging from the current situation, attacking Wananai would be tantamount to seeking death. Brother Chen, what do you think? Can you fight? Bao Qi asked tentatively. Of course we can fight. Give me a combined brigade, and I can easily take down Bankum, not to mention Wan Hanai. The problem is not enough firepower. What Chen Chen said was a very realistic problem. The main reason why no one took up this bounty was that the reward for the bounty limited the amount of firepower invested. If the stakes are not 10,000 US dollars, but 100,000 or 1 million, do you think anyone would be willing to play? Just pull over a set of 107 firearms, and you can beat those bandits into a panic. However, the export price of a 107mm rocket is 6,000 yuan, equivalent to 1,000 US dollars. But when it reaches the hands of the mercenary group, it will cost 5 times as much. A $10,000 bounty is only enough to fire 2 rounds. What should I do then? Bao Qi asked worriedly. Chen Chen finally raised his head, and at this moment, he already had a preliminary plan in his mind. There is a way. No matter how strong the enemy is, they only have about 20 people at most. If we can cause 30% casualties in the first wave of attack, that is 6 or 7 people, we can directly break their morale, and the battlefield will easily become a one-sided harvest. To achieve this, we have 2 approaches. The first is to increase firepower. The second is to improve tactics. Of course, improving tactics won't solve all problems. Your level is too low. Without long-term training, you can't meet the requirements of special operations. Besides, we lack special operations equipment. It's impossible to inflict a high casualty ratio in open terrain. Then we must prioritize increasing our firepower. But we have no money. Shirdakai took the opportunity to pour another bucket of cold water on him. Yes, without money, where would the firepower come from? Some firepower is actually not as expensive as you think. Chen Chen knocked on the table and continued. First of all, our firepower requirements must meet 2 points. First, the range must be long enough, at least 150 meters, because this is the farthest distance that the enemy can detect us with the naked eye in the jungle. Secondly, you need to have a certain level of precision. You can't just bomb randomly and hit nothing. Third, the destructive power must be strong. For a camp of 20 people, the central area covers more than 100 meters in length and width. Throwing grenades will basically not cause any damage. So, based on these conditions, plus our own budget, I think we can rule out some options. Rifle grenades won't work. They're not powerful enough. We can't afford to buy rocket launchers, and we can't rent artillery from the military either. So there is only one solution. No conscience cannon. No conscience cannon? The 3 people on the opposite side were shocked. After all, they were taught by the same teacher, and they had all more or less heard of the reputation of the conscienceless cannon. However, due to the special historical background and geographical relationship, in northern Myanmar in 2009, no one really used this antique thing. Because most forces can easily obtain obsolete weapons from various channels, they have no motivation or need to research and develop homemade weapons. Of course, the situation is different now. Now Chen Chen needs something that is cheap, easy to use, and unexpected. Looking at the expressions of the 3 people, Chen Chen thought for a moment, then continued. It's definitely not a simple heartless cannon. The grenade launcher's accuracy and throwing distance are not enough. Well, let's take out all the money and buy some equipment. Go to the market first and see if you can find a 12-liter gas tank. Remember, it should be the one with an outer diameter of 249 millimeters. If you can find one, rent for. It's renting, not buying. Just say we want gas and return the tank later. Save as much money as you can. Then, go to the construction site in the north and see if there are any DN250 cast iron drainage pipes. I remember that when we came, they were just building a sewage system. In theory, DN250 pipes should be standard. Finally, we found a repair shop and borrowed their welding equipment. If we can complete these tasks smoothly, then we will have no problem taking this reward. Chen Chen was very confident in what he was going to make, because he knew that if that thing could be used in the Middle East, it could be used in northern Myanmar. The gas tank cannon is the guerrilla's savior and a magical weapon that once shot down a US Chinook helicopter. How did it become popular in the Middle East? It was simple, because one day, a militant who was troubled by the lack of firepower syndrome suddenly found that his gas tank could be stuffed into the drainage pipe at the door of his house that was blown open by the US artillery shells. Moreover, it fits perfectly. Then, a brilliant idea was born. Why don't I just launch the gas tank and let it act as a large bomb? He immediately put his idea into practice, but he soon discovered that if he only used gas explosion, the power of the explosion would be too small. So he emptied the gas tanks and filled them with the cheapest explosive he could find, ANFO. This is a cheap explosive made of ammonium nitrate, XX and XX. How cheap is it? C4 is cheap, costing only $1 per gram, but ANFO can be as cheap as $2 per pound. Thus, the most useful homemade weapon in the history of Middle East guerrilla warfare was born. After that, it underwent a series of evolutions, with the addition of tail fins, the addition of stabilizer bars, and the upgrade of the charge from ANFO to imitation Judy Sun dynamite, TNT, and RDX. Its effective range can reach an astonishing 800 meters, and the impact point dispersion does not exceed 100 meters. In the highest record, the explosive equivalent of a gas tank shell can even be equivalent to 150 kilograms of TNT. Of course, Chen Chen did not need the first trial-produced cannon to reach this level. He only had 2 requirements. It should be able to fly out and be able to explode. He is not worried about the power. He can make ANFO himself, and the raw materials can be bought in Myanmar. As for the propellant, although there is no nitrocellulose, it is simpler and can be replaced with black powder. Myanmar has plenty of this stuff, and it is cheap. The only regret is that I was too hasty when I searched the Kokong arsenal before and didn't find any explosives. Otherwise, if ANFO was mixed with some TNT or RDX, it could even create the effect of a fuel-air bomb because of the different detonation speeds. Just make do with it. We don't seek to cause total destruction. We only seek to gain the upper hand. So, according to Chen Chen's plan, the 4-member team started the purchasing operation separately. Dakai found the pipe with an inner diameter of 250 and a wall thickness of 12, which was better than Chen Chen had initially expected. Li Bang found the gas tanks and ordered 6 at once. Bao Chi found a repair shop willing to take the job, while Chen Chen took action himself and bought black powder from a fireworks workshop and ammonium nitrate from an agricultural supply store. As for the other 2 raw materials for making ANFO, XX and XX, they're really everywhere, and you don't have to worry about them at all. Dakai was surprised that he could buy ammonium nitrate. He didn't expect that there was an agricultural supply store in Myanmar. In fact, let alone the agricultural supply store, there are also 4 hospitals, 6 schools from kindergarten to high school, and 2 nursing homes. Everything was ready in 3 days. Following Chen Chen's guidance, the repair shop customized the first gas tank cannon they needed. The barrel has no rifling, the shells have no tail fins, and it is equipped with the simplest detachable wheeled gun mount. In fact, it is modified from the chicken bus commonly seen in rural areas. However, although it was crude, The effect was surprisingly good in the first experiment after being pulled into the mountains. Ignition through the simplest fuse, the fixed gun barrel successfully through the gas tank, filled with mud and sand nearly 200 meters away, deviating from the target position by less than 30 meters. That's enough. So Chen Chen worked overtime and spent another 2 days to finally produce enough ANFO explosives for 4 artillery shells and carefully loaded them into the gas tank. In order to keep it secret, the entire process was completed in a small room in the hotel. The volatile gas made Chen Chen's eyes hurt, but fortunately, there was an electric fan in the hotel that could be used temporarily as an exhaust fan. Finally, when he turned off the fan, it meant that his first attempt had been successful. Looking at the 4 fully prepared shells, stars almost popped out of Bao Chi's eyes. Chen Chen, no, Brother Chen, who on earth is he? He can fight, he can behave, and now he can make cannons. 2 cannons with a total cost of 4,000 yuan. Isn't this the kind of guerrilla genius that my father talked about before? Damn it, I've clearly read Friends of Dual-Use Military and Civilian Talents, the Militia Training Manual, and even the Cold War version of 100,000 Whys, but why haven't I learned this kind of stuff? He secretly made up his mind to follow Chen Chen in the future. Chen Chen is definitely not an ordinary person. He's going to do great things. Maybe the positions of those families will have to be changed in the future. Like Bao Chi, Li Bang was also full of surprise, but due to his personality, he did not show it too obviously. But judging from the way he caressed the 2 hell cannons lovingly, he was truly impressed. Among the 4, Shi Dakai is probably the only one who lacks confidence. Even after seeing the projectile effect of the gas tank cannon, he was still full of doubts. What if this thing is useless by then? He asked worriedly. It doesn't matter if it's useless. I didn't expect it to be useful in the first place. Chen Chen replied calmly. He was just trying his best to make the best preparations, but he didn't put all his hopes on these 2 cannons which might not be stable. Ah, forget it if it's useless. Then we'll do it then. Shi Dakai's eyes widened, but before he could finish, Chen Chen interrupted him. If it really doesn't work, then we still have 2 options. First, we could just run away. We definitely can't stay in Munka, but we can still go to Mofa or even run to Dakali. Second, use plan number 2 and continue to destroy Wanhinai. Do you have plan number 2? Bao Chi asked excitedly. Of course, who would make only 1 battle plan? I made 6. Shi Dakai was secretly shocked. Although he didn't know what the 6 plans were, he suddenly felt a little relieved. Can you tell me more about it? Chen Chen nodded slightly and replied. A more specific combat plan will be developed after we complete our reconnaissance. The current plan is a preliminary one based on the information we already have. To sum up, each plan corresponds to a keyword. Gas cannons setting mountains on fire, continuous harassment with precision rifles, fishing enforcement, waiting for the opportunity, and strong attack. So, do you understand roughly? The 3 of them thought about it for a moment, and it was Bao Chi who reacted first. I understand. They are all very good solutions. After he finished speaking, even Shi Dakai finally nodded. It's really good, but I think sting enforcement is safer. After all, we can catch them off guard. How about we use this method? Chen Chen rolled his eyes and said, if you go to be a fish, we will use this. Shi Dakai smiled awkwardly. Then forget it. The cannon was left in the sundry warehouse of the repair shop, and the shells were still kept in the hotel where Chen Chen and his friends were temporarily staying. No one wanted to sleep with something that could blow them to ashes, so they hardly got any rest. After finding a place to calibrate their guns that night, they immediately set out for Wanhinai Mountain and began their first field reconnaissance. Wanhinai Mountain is about 16 kilometers away from Munka. When you go there, you can take a special go-kart to take people there. When you come back, you can only walk or try your luck. However, the other 3 had no complaints about this. After all, they had already walked more than 200 kilometers, so this little bit didn't matter. Just treat it as a training exercise. It was 9 o'clock in the evening when they arrived near Wanhinai Mountain. They got off the car 2 kilometers away from the opposite hill and walked forward. Then, according to the map, they climbed up Wangkangnong Mountain, which was about 600 meters away from the west side of Wanhinai Mountain. The altitude of this mountain is slightly higher than that of Wanhinai Mountain, and it can be used to confirm the specific location of the Wanhinai bandit camp. After climbing up the tallest tree and using the PSO, 1 scope on the SVD, to clearly see the direction of the fire in the woods, the 4 began to move through the jungle. Chen Chen was very cautious. After entering the jungle, he immediately emphasized the most basic anti-tracking rules to the other 3 people. Don't break what you can bend, don't step on what you can cross, and don't move what you don't have to move. If you step on wet ground, immediately use your feet to smear and get off the soft ground. But don't do any unnecessary covering. Do you understand? Clear. The other 3 people's whispered responses came through the headphones, and the sound was very clear. Throw microphones are just good to use. Russian products are just good to use. It was worth stealing them from the armory. When they were less than 300 meters away from the fire, Chen Chen slowed down his pace. If the other party wants to deploy secret sentries, this is the most likely range for them to appear. However, it is obvious that the living environment of the bandits in Wanhinai camp is too relaxed. They usually bully honest villagers and have never faced attacks from armed forces. In terms of camp security, they do much worse than the Allied forces. After advancing to 150 meters, the 4-man team did not encounter any obstacles. And at this time, they could already see the entire picture of the bandit camp. It is a typical jungle settlement, with all the buildings made of wood and arranged in a circular shape, with a square in the middle for residents to carry out activities. There are 3 defensive measures. The first one was a wooden fence surrounding the camp, more than 2 meters high, but clearly not very sturdy. Second, there is a tower at the southwest and northwest corners of the camp, with light machine gun firing points on them. They are usually used as observation posts, covering the highway below the Wanhinai camp. The third one was traps and trip mines. Chen Chen actually didn't see any obvious features, but he knew they must be there. Not difficult to beat. Chen Chen thought secretly. Compared to the camps of drug lords he had fought in his previous life, the layout of this camp was much less complicated. It is accessible from north to south and has a wide shooting range. By occupying a commanding point, you can sweep the entire camp. And if the other party wanted to hide in the building, Chen Chen would not hesitate to greet them with the gas tank cannon. The only troublesome point is that the vegetation around the camp is relatively lush, and the tall trees may block the trajectory of the shells. But this is not an unsolvable problem. We can just close the distance and launch a high-angle projectile when the defense is relaxed in the middle of the night. After memorizing all the layouts and selecting the attack location based on the terrain, Chen Chen whispered orders to the other three. Stay hidden in place and pay attention to disguise. We have to wait until tomorrow morning. After they wake up, we will observe the functions of several buildings and the concentration of personnel. Understood. Brother Chen, what time do you want to wait? Bao Qi's voice came from the headphones. I don't know. If someone comes out, we will evacuate. Chen Chen answered briefly and then stopped talking. From his perspective, he could see all three people lurking in front of him. As the lurking time gradually lengthened, the performances of the three people began to differ. Bao Qi was very irritable. He couldn't help moving around and even spoke in a low voice occasionally, trying to chat with other people. Chen Chen was so angry that he wanted to give him a radio discipline class immediately. Li Bang was much more well-behaved, and he didn't talk or move most of the time. But when Chen Chen was doing the routine communication to confirm, he discovered that he was just asleep. What surprised Chen Chen was Shi Dakai. He was very stable, so stable that even Chen Chen admired him. He was always awake and alert, and could report what he observed in a timely manner according to the principles of intelligence reporting. Although everyone was focused in the same direction during this investigation because of the military qualities of the other three people, and Chen Chen could also see what he saw, having this awareness showed that he had certain abilities. But he has indeed not received any training. So is that a talent in some sense? The sky gradually brightened, and when it was time to retreat, Chen Chen discovered that Shi Dakai's emotions hardly fluctuated. He is always pessimistic, cautious, and low-key. My goodness, I never thought that his character flaws could lead to such a result. It was a pleasant surprise. Retreating all the way back to 600 meters away, the four people evacuated from the planned evacuation point on the west side of Wonkong Nong Mountain. After hiking for 4 hours, they returned to Mungka. Enough intelligence, ready to fight. But before the fight started, Chen Chen had to find the fat man from the Wood Ghost Corps and confirm with him whether he would accept the bounty. Half an hour later in the office, the fat man looked at Chen Chen opposite him in surprise and asked, "Are you really going to take this order? I have to remind you that Wanha is not easy to beat. There have been small gun groups that have tried to fight before, but basically no one has managed to escape unscathed. It's impossible to get in with just a few guns. If we use heavy weapons, the cost will be too high. Why don't you guys reconsider it? Although our Mugawe's assessment is strict now, there is still a chance for you to join." "No, we are ready," Chen Chen said firmly. The fat man nodded and didn't persuade him any further. "Then I will notify the employer, and I will help you temporarily lock in this reward. If someone comes to take it in the short term, you will be given priority. Is it reliable? Lock in the bounty. Will our information be exposed?" Chen Chen asked warily. "No, we are very principled in what we do and will never expose your information. Of course, if you accept the bounty next time, you don't need to come to me. Just do it yourself and take the evidence to ask the employer for the money." "I see. I'll have to trouble you again this time, boss. You are indeed the largest mercenary group." Chen Chen complimented him appropriately, as a way of thanking him for his reminder. "After all, I really don't understand this process very well." The fat man waved his hand and replied, "I'm helping you because I think you have potential. It's not a big deal. To put it bluntly, this is also a small investment for us. No matter what, I hope everything goes well for you, and that you get the reward. By your good words." Chen Chen said goodbye and left, and after he left, the fat man picked up the phone. "Lao He, someone has accepted Wan Hinai's bounty. Tell them. How could they care about such matters if they are not from Chaiseri? Chaiseri is training? How come I don't know? Let them come to our place to train. They're going to beat Wan Hino too? Are you kidding? When?" The fat man's expression turned serious. "Next week? That doesn't matter. By the time we miss Chaiseri, they will probably be dead. There are only 4 of them. They want to beat Wan Hino. It's just a dream. Got it? I won't get involved. There's no point getting involved in such a mess. If you want to watch the fun, just go and watch it yourself. There's been no gunfire near Minka for a long time. It's a bit of fun for 4 of us to go fight Wan Hinai." The next morning, the combat operation officially began. The atmosphere was not tense at the beginning, because according to Chen Chen's plan, there would be at least 18 hours between the start of the action and the formal battle. What were they doing during those 18 hours? The answer is somewhat embarrassing. Transporting artillery. They spent their last $1,000 to rent a shabby Hilux pickup truck, pulling 2 gas tank cannons disguised as building materials in a huge U-shaped circle. After a total distance of nearly 110 kilometers, they finally arrived at the scheduled drop-off point on the west side of Wonkong Nongshan. The distance was much farther than when they took the go-kart before. In addition to secrecy and safety considerations, another reason is of course that these 2 guns are too heavy and cannot be used on many roads. 1.7 meters long cast iron pipe, 250 millimeters inner diameter, 12 millimeters wall thickness. The barrel alone weighs 420 kilograms, and the 2 gun mounts weigh more than 110 kilograms. The go-kart can't pull it at all. After they get off the car, the real test officially begins. They had to manpowerfully transport the 2 guns to an artillery position 200 meters away from the camp and complete assembly and camouflage between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. without being discovered by the enemy, and within the specified time. Once the time limit is reached, you must wait another day. If the gun is left there for a day, the risk of being discovered will increase dramatically. You can only give it a try. The straight line distance is 900 meters, 400 meters downhill, and 500 meters uphill. The first trip was to carry the gun barrel, which took the 4-person team 40 minutes. The second trip to transport the gun carriage and shells took a sharp increase to 70 minutes. Then came the gun barrel, gun mount, and shells. The hemp rope used to lift the gun barrel caused Chen Chen's shoulder to hurt so much that he was even a little dazed. Why the hell does this feel like the same experience as in my previous life when I was carrying a coffin into the mountains in the countryside for burial? The method is the same, the weight is about the same, the only difference is probably that this time no shouting is allowed. I hope these 2 coffins can hold all the evil bandits like Wan Hanai. After the last move was completed, the gun mount and gun barrel were assembled and camouflaged, and Chen Chen personally calculated the trajectory and adjusted the firing angle. The time is now 4:30 and the task is completed ahead of schedule. Chen Chen was so tired that he almost collapsed to the ground, but he couldn't rest. With the current combat strength of the 4-man team, he absolutely cannot let the other 3 find their own combat positions because due to extreme fatigue, their movements will easily be distorted, and if they are not careful, they will be discovered by the enemy observing on the tower. Therefore, he had to go alone and defend a firepower point by himself without any firepower support. It took him a full half hour to slowly move from the west side of the camp to the east side. It was almost 5 o'clock at this time. Check the communications. Chen Chen lay on the ground, turned on the radio, and called in a low voice. Number 1 received in position. Number 2 received in position. Number 3 received in position. After getting answers from the 3 people in turn, Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Attention, number 1 and number 2, start firing at 5:20. Do not move the muzzle. After the first round of firing, reset the gun carriage according to the position I marked. Clear. Number 1. Number 2 Li Bang and Bao Qi replied in turn. Attention, number 3, you are in charge of the southwest tower, and I am in charge of the northwest tower. We need to simultaneously destroy the enemy's light machine gun firepower points 10 seconds before the bombardment begins. After firing, regardless of whether you hit the target or not, you need to immediately abandon the sniper rifle and use the assault rifle for fire suppression. Do you understand? Clear. Chen Chen's division of labor was extremely detailed. This was, of course, because the combat qualities of the other 3 were not up to standard. However, the lack of running and training was also one of the major problems. During this period, in the days of preparing the gas tank cannon, they also conducted some training and tactical learning, but it was basically a last-minute cram session, and it was unknown how much effect it would have, so they could only use the most precise and rigid subdivision of tasks to ensure efficiency of execution. Chen Chen continued to issue tasks. Number 1. Number 2, after the bombardment is completed, organize the shooting according to the predetermined positions. Please note that the principle of firing is, number 1 is responsible for the 2 buildings in the southwest area. Number 2 and number 3 are responsible for the central square, and I am responsible for the rest of the area. If there is a blank in any area, when supporting other areas, the 3 of you will select targets and fire in order of left and right. Do you understand? Clear. The 3 replied again. Such target selection is actually very rigid and inaccurate. But there is no other way. In an open space, a team cannot always quickly select the enemy based on the proximity principle and responsibility zone strategy, as in CQB combat. Chen Chen made such arrangements in order to ensure that firepower is not wasted too much as possible. Of course, even such a strategy was quite novel to the other 3. How could they have received such training? When they were on the battlefield, they just fired randomly. Even the commanders did not understand what firepower efficiency meant. They only knew to shout, "Shoot them for me," at high-value targets. Bao Qi and Li Bang admired Chen Chen even more, and Shi Dekai also took a deep breath, gripped the handle of the SVD tightly, and aimed at the machine gunner who was resting against the wall on the target tower. One last thing, when I give the order to advance, everyone will immediately and quickly advance to position 2. No shooting is allowed during the process. Do you understand? Shooting was not allowed in order to ensure the secrecy of the advance. At around 5 o'clock, the sun had not yet risen in northern Myanmar and the light was dim. It was not easy to find moving targets in the chaos after the attack. Clear. Received a reply, and everything is ready. Chen Chen lay quietly on the ground, the triangle in the sight firmly locked onto the enemy on the northwest tower. At the same time, he was also ready to use the mechanical sights below the PSO-1. He couldn't rely solely on optical aiming because he didn't trust Shi Dekai. Even if it was only 200 meters away, what if he missed? He had just learned how to use a sniper rifle. Then, he had to shoot quickly. Aiming alone couldn't do that. Only mechanical sights could do that. Countdown 1 minute, start loading shells. Chen Chen gave the order. Li Bang and Bao Qi took action immediately, and Chen Chen's heartbeat began to accelerate suddenly. This is the most dangerous moment. The 2 of them will reload quickly regardless of the danger of being exposed, while they must keep a close eye on the light machine gunner on the tower and eliminate him immediately if there is any unusual movement. Countdown 15 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. Chen Chen pulled the trigger, and the machine gunner in the northwest corner fell to the ground. Then he pulled his gun to the left and checked the machine gunner in the southwest corner and found that he had also fallen to the ground. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief, and then 2 gas tank cannons fired. Oh! The shells flew out, trailing their primitive flaming fuses, leaving a trail of smoke in the dimly lit sky. Li Bang and Bao Qi stared at the shells nervously, while Chen Chen cursed angrily. Forget the shells. Get into firing position and fire. The 2 men, awakened from their dream, fell forward and aimed their guns. In just 3 seconds, Chen Chen used SVD to knock down a patrolling bandit who came out from behind the barracks to check the situation after hearing the gunshots. Boom, 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 boom. Three Type 81 rifles were spewing flames as they launched the first round of suppressive fire on the buildings. At the same time, the gas tank flying high fell down. At this time, Wanho was in the camp. A bandit was awakened from his sleep by the loud gunshots. He subconsciously reached out to grab his gun, but at this moment, a louder bang exploded in front of him. Boom! Something broke through the roof and landed at his feet. He was terrified. In such a situation, the only possible cause was military bombardment. He peed at the first opportunity, really peed. But just when he thought he was about to die, he suddenly saw the thing under his feet. It's a gas tank. The person who had just been awakened in the barracks spoke. A gas tank. He saw it clearly and breathed a sigh of relief. Gas tank, that's fine. Boom! A gas tank shell hit the target by sheer luck and landed in the largest living barracks that Chen Chen had marked in advance. There were at least 5 enemies inside, but only one escaped. The other shot landed at the edge of the square, missing the intended target by nearly 40 meters. However, the power of the 2 shells directly shocked Chen Chen. The barracks were torn to pieces. The shell that exploded in the square sent a shock wave, carrying debris across the entire square, which was larger than 2 basketball courts. He saw with his own eyes that a bandit who had just rushed out of the gate had his left leg cut off by flying debris, and then fell down in an extremely twisted manner. The unlucky guy who happened to be near the landing point was directly blown into a bloody mist. Fuck! Chen Chen couldn't help but turn on the microphone. Is this thing that powerful? 2 minutes after the cannon fired, the large-scale gun battle officially began. The 4-man group's shooting position had not been completely exposed, so even if the other side wanted to organize a counterattack, they had no idea where to start. Too fast. From the first bullet that took out the observation post in the tower, to the gas tank cannon exploding in the camp, to Chen Chen's precise harvesting of key targets, the 4-man team was suppressing the opponent the entire time. Such tactics are called rapid suppression in special operations, and the purpose is to cut off the enemy's ODA, or simply put, to cut off the opponent's observation, judgment, decision-making, and execution cycle. Once ODA is cut off and the attacker is able to maintain the suppression posture, the direction of a small-scale battle is basically determined. Chen Chen plays the role of continuous suppression. The bullets spewing out of his SVD hit the opponent's weak spot again and again. Whenever the opponent tried to organize a counterattack or observe the battlefield, he would first choose to kill the enemy, who looked awake. This put the enemy in an awkward situation where they were unable to obtain intelligence or make decisions from the beginning to the end. They were forced to start a defensive rhythm, trying to delay time and gain reconnaissance opportunities by finding cover and retreating into buildings. But Chen Chen didn't want to give them a chance. Reload the shells and launch a second round of bombardment. Receive. The firepower density of the 3-person firing point dropped immediately. Sure Dakai continued to fire short bursts with 1 shot each, and several empty magazines were left around him. In this operation, each of them carried a total of 12 assault rifle magazines, and in just 3 minutes, they had used up nearly half of them. Logically speaking, Sure Dakai should have started to panic, feel pessimistic, and hesitate at this time. But for some reason, he felt more and more excited the more he fought. This is what war is like. What did you play before? Without organization, plans, and tactics, what good is it to have a lot of bullets? Can you hit anyone in the head? Now, although the distance is 200 meters, and although my shooting accuracy is not very good, I can fully feel the effect of my shooting. The enemy is constantly suppressed and occasionally knocked down. And he had already knocked down 2 enemies with his own hands. Hit hard. If Sure Dakai had only pulled the trigger out of survival instinct during the CQB in the teaching building before, now he felt that he had really started to think from the perspective of a soldier. Li Bang and Bao Qi. No, it's number 1 and number 2 who have a firepower gap, so I have to fill it for them. But the 81 gun has a limited firing rate and a limited ammunition capacity. What should we do? We should fire in bursts. We are afraid of bullets, and so are the enemies. It is enough to aim at a few points where the enemy may appear, pull the trigger, and let the bullet fly past them. Because my goal now is not to kill the enemy, but to suppress their possible counterattack. In an instant, Sure Dakai made the most correct choice, which coincided with Chen Chen's choice. Chen Chen was surprised for a second, but after Sure Dakai blocked several key doorways, he quickly adjusted his strategy, chose to supplement the opponent's field of vision, and began to suppress the enemies hiding behind the cover. 2 people and 2 guns prevented the enemies in the camp from coming out. But of course, the enemy was right to retreat. After the rate of casualties dropped sharply and they got in touch with the remaining personnel of their own side, the armed personnel in Wananai camp re-established ODA. The counterattack began, and this time, the 4-man team's 2 firing points began to be exposed. Bullets were flying everywhere. Chen Chen was not considered as their main target because of his low firing frequency, but the situation on the trio's side was not good either. The shell had been loaded, but there was no chance to light the fuse. Brother Chen, we are suppressed. We are suppressed. We can't fire. Chen Chen calmly shot down a firing point that was spewing flames from the window. In fact, he didn't know whether he hit it or not, but the firing point did stop firing. Keep hidden and find an opportunity to fire. Chen Chen replied briefly. Now is the most dangerous time. When the 2 sides begin to stalemate, the side with superior military strength will regain control at an extremely fast speed. If they cannot interrupt the opponent's counterattack, then it will be the turn of the 4-man team to have their ODA interrupted. No, the opponent has started to advance. Bao Qi was still yelling, and Chen Chen aimed his gun, but a volley of bullets pushed him back. In desperation, he had to try to transfer. That's the biggest problem with this team. It's not that there is not enough firepower. It's that we can't hit anyone. Most of the casualties were caused by Chen Chen alone. Once he fails at this point, the whole situation will fall into a passive position. We can't let them rush out of the village, otherwise it will be dangerous if the bullet hits the barrel of the gun. Bao Qi's voice came from the headset. For a moment, Chen Chen didn't even react to what he was going to do. Get down. Don't move. I only need 10 seconds. Cover me. No cover. Don't move. Chen Chen saw that under the dim sky, a tiny flame suddenly shot up from the woods. That was Bao Qi holding the lighter. Countless bullets flew past him. Chen Chen had no time to hesitate. He immediately looked for the enemy and shot, killing an enemy in the distance. But the two enemies on the east side who had been keeping an eye on him also took the opportunity to lock onto his position and turned their light machine guns around and started firing. Being pushed back again, Chen Chen had no other options. He saw the flame go out. Bao Qi. Then, almost at the same time, Bao Qi's cheers came from the headset. Fuck, it's on fire. It's all on fire. 2 guns, 2 shells. All lit. I'm so fucking awesome. The 2 gas tank cannons that Chen Chen and his team had were extremely primitive. So primitive that the propellant and the shell fuse had to be ignited separately. In other words, within just a few seconds, Bao Qi completed 4 ignition actions. Damn good luck. After a very short interval, the cannon fired. 2 gas tanks fell from the sky. And this time, the accuracy was far less than the first round of artillery fire. But poor accuracy does not mean poor power. 1 shell hit the wooden fence on the east side of the camp and bounced to the edge of the camp. The earth-shattering explosion sounded, and even Chen Chen felt palpitations. The machine gunner who had already rushed to the fence and was ready to continue suppressing Chen Chen was stunned. He became the biggest unlucky guy in this round of shelling. He was clearly the weakest point in the entire camp. How could he be hit? But he didn't know that the 2 cannons had no accuracy at all, and they were able to land in the camp, which was already an extraordinary performance. The other one fell under the tower in the southwest corner, and the tower, which was more than 10 meters high, was directly knocked down and crashed into a wooden building in the camp. The sudden situation attracted the attention of all enemies, especially the scene of the tower falling from the sky, which almost scared everyone silly. ODA was interrupted again, and Chen Chen seized the opportunity. Shoot one by one and start harvesting. The feel of this SVD isn't quite right, but fortunately the distance is very close, so it can be used. During the second ODA vacuum period, the 4 people seized the loophole created by the enemy's attempt to counterattack, and with a wave of suppressing shooting, they once again harvested the lives of up to 5 people. Intelligence said that Juan and I had only about 20 gunmen. Now, it should be halfway destroyed, and it should collapse. As Chen Chen expected, the remaining enemies lost all their formations and began to flee frantically towards the collapsed fence and the reserved exit of the camp. Chen Chen started micromanaging. From now on, follow my instructions and block the exit of the camp. Don't worry about other locations. Clear. This is the advantage of the pickup earphones plus throat microphone. No matter how noisy the battlefield environment is, the instructions can always be transmitted clearly. The 3-man team near the artillery position began to turn their guns and fire at the exit of the camp, and the enemy who had just run there ran back again. At the entrance of Building 1, concentrate your fire. Receive. Building 4, fill my field of vision. Which is number 4? The one downstairs in the northwest tower. Damn it. There are only 2 enemies left. They're hiding in Building 3. Start advancing to position 2. Received. Start moving forward. The foursome each began to advance. Provide covering fire. I will close to a distance of 50 meters. Understood. Cover fire. The last 2 enemies became mice trapped in the cabinet, but Chen Chen did not intend to reach into the cabinet to take it out. He stopped about 50 meters away, then took out a grenade from behind. Type 67 wooden-handle grenade. He also brought a Type 82 grenade, but was reluctant to use it. 1 per second. Chen Chen threw 6 grenades, all of which landed on the roof. 3 of them fell into the house through the big hole in the roof. It seemed not enough, and at this moment, he saw a black thing flying from the other side and flew straight into the target building. Then came a second and a third. The one who threw the grenade was Li Bang. At least 80 meters away. He looked like he was doing it easily. That was enough. Cease fire. Alert. Chen Chen gave the order. Then, he took out the SVD from his back and started to shoot the corpses lying on the ground one by one. The ceasefire does not mean the end of the battle. As the sun gradually rises, Chen Chen's lone gunshot lasts for a full 20 minutes. Afterwards, after confirming that all the bodies within sight had been cleared, Chen Chen gave instructions to the other 3. Number 3, advance to the camp and join me. Number 1, number 2, pay attention and report in time. Receive. Receive. Number 3, be careful of mines and traps. Chen Chen reminded again. The reason why he chose Shi Dakai to cooperate with him in cleaning up the battlefield was because he was worried that Li Bang and Bao Qi would be too reckless and cause accidents. And Shi Dakai did not disappoint him. His cautious character was suitable for the current situation. We found a mine, Chino 4. What should we do? Come around. That I'm not sure about the range of the mine, it's hard to avoid it. Chen Chen stood there helplessly, but on second thought, Shi Dakai's worries were indeed not unnecessary. After all, they have not received any relevant training, let alone expecting them to clear mines. Even simply bypassing them would still be risky. For every visible mine, there are countless hidden mines following behind it. Then why don't you just come around to my side and join me along my route? Got it, leaving immediately. After waiting for 20 minutes, it was already dawn, and Shi Dakai finally met up with Chen Chen. The 2 men climbed over the fence that was blown over by the gas tank shells and stepped into the camp. When he saw the corpses scattered all over the camp, Shi Dakai realized belatedly that they were surprised by the battle they had fought. In a siege operation, They killed all the enemies without even entering the enemy's fortifications. How did they do it? If the Burmese soldiers had fought like this before, would they have been suffocated to death in that teaching building? No. Even if they didn't fight like this, if it weren't for Chen Chen, he would have died. He looked at Chen Chen, and for the first time, a clear emotion of gratitude arose in his heart. However, the current situation is obviously not suitable for saying too much because Chen Chen has already issued new orders. Take out the grenades and clear out the remaining buildings one by one. Pay attention and make sure to reload if you have it. Clear. Shirdekai clenched the gun in his hand, quickly glanced around, then pulled the grenade and threw it into the nearest doorway. With a loud bang, Chen Chen said helplessly, "Be sure to report any projectiles thrown. Haven't you ever seen an American movie?" "Okay, I'll remember that." Shirdekai looked so humble and submissive that Chen Chen felt a little uncomfortable. He shook his head and began to quickly sweep the battlefield with Shirdekai. "Pay attention to the direction of my gun. I told you that the door is a death hourglass area. Before entering the door, clear the simple corner first, that is, the wall you can see at the door. After entering the room, move along the route from the door to the simple corner and clear the dangerous corner, which is the two corners of the wall next to the door. After selecting the position, do not move the gun muzzle at will, and always keep the gun muzzle pointing to the target position. After the simple corner clearing is completed and the enemy is forced into a dangerous corner by cutting the corner, you can continue to use projectiles to compress the enemy's living space. Give me the grenade." Chen Chen took the grenade handed over by Shirdekai, leaned against the doorway, and threw it toward the wall, then immediately moved away to avoid it. This is a wooden structure. It can't withstand shock waves and fragments, so you need to hide. If it's a concrete structure, you can wait where you are and rush in immediately after the explosion. Watching Chen Chen's series of demonstration operations, Shirdakai's heart was filled with excitement. He finally understood how Bao Qi and Li Bang felt. What is a master? This is called a master. Not only can he stroll leisurely on the battlefield, but he can also teach himself a very useful lesson. Shirdakai's eyes also changed. He followed Chen Chen into the building, then fired additional shots at the two bodies that had collapsed on the ground. Next, the final mopping up operation went as smoothly as silk. They encountered resistance twice. One time, 3 seriously injured people in the North Barracks hid in the dangerous corner that Chen Chen mentioned. They were forced into a simple corner by Chen Chen and Shirdekai with 2 wooden-handle grenades, and then they waited and shot them. Another time, 2 enemies who had been hiding the entire time tried to go around from behind a building. Li Bang and Bao Qi, who were left behind at position number 2, discovered that Chen Chen still did not fight them head-on. He directly blocked their route of movement with an 82 type offensive grenade, and then, following Bao Qi's instructions, he knocked down the 2 men from behind. Within less than 15 minutes of entering the camp, all buildings were cleared and all enemies were killed, a total of 24 people, with no survivors. The battlefield has been cleared. Number 3 goes up to the tower and sets up a firing point. Number 1, Number 2, reunite at the camp and follow the route we took. Good. Bao Qi's voice was filled with undisguised excitement. He felt that today's battle was like a dream. For people wiped out more than 20 people without any casualties on their own side. And this is based on the premise that Chen Chen is the only one in the 4-man team who can kill the enemy quickly. If I can practice my marksmanship later, how strong will this team be? Is this the power of tactics? No. This cannot be called a simple tactic. This is the art of war. After jogging into the camp, Bao Qi was greeted by Chen Chen's scolding. Of course, it was because he neglected to observe and was careless while running. Bao Qi sincerely realized his mistake, and then couldn't help but say, "Brother Chen, we made a fortune this time." As soon as he said this, Chen Chen finally couldn't hold back his laughter. Really made a fortune. Although the bandits in this bandit village are low-end and probably don't have much cash, their equipment is all real equipment. At least 3 light machine guns, a few Type 56 submachine guns, and the rest are basically Type 81 submachine guns. These things can be sold for at least hundreds of thousands of RMB on the black market. Of course, if a legitimate mercenary group came to fight, this amount of money would not be worth it at all. After deducting the costs, each person only gets a few thousand yuan, so no one is willing to risk their lives. But Chen Chen's group of 4 is different. They have fewer people and lower equipment costs. Prepare to start searching for spoils. Bao Qi, you go to the north building to set up a secret sentry. Li Bang, follow me to search the camp. Clear. No one would raise any objection to Chen Chen's arrangement. Chen Chen didn't say much, he just held his gun and started searching. He first gathered all the guns together, and then began to check other items in the bandit camp. Just as he expected, the spoils here were not too rich. After searching for a while, apart from a small stack of US dollars found in the officer's barracks, the most valuable thing was the 18-hand pickup truck parked outside. You are so damn poor. Get ready to search your pockets and take off your clothes. You should have all the valuables on you. Chen Chen said speechlessly. Okay, I'll touch it. Li Bang answered immediately. He certainly didn't want to take the spoils for himself, but he felt that with Chen Chen's status, he shouldn't do such dirty work as touching corpses. Chen Chen followed him. It would obviously be safer to have one more person on guard. It would be enough for one person to touch the corpse. At this time, the first ray of sunlight finally penetrated the woods and shone through. Just when Chen Chen thought that the mission was successfully completed, Shirdekai, who was observing on the tower, suddenly gave a warning. Someone is coming. 3 cars, lots of people. Hide. Take up solid cover. Chen Chen immediately gave orders when he heard Shirdeik's warning. At the same time, he began to move quickly and hid himself behind a building. 3 cars. That means at least 10 people, and they should not be from the bandit camp. If a conflict occurs, he is really not sure. After all, this 4-man team looks strong, but in fact it is just a temporary combat force that has been forced into magic power. It has no advantage in an upright frontal battlefield. If it really doesn't work, don't take the spoils, just go back alive. Chen Chen thought so, but soon, Shirdaka made another report. The other side didn't seem to have any bad intentions. They were carrying guns and waving white flags, but they didn't raise their guns. They probably weren't here to fight. Waving the white flag? That's a bit strange. Who was on the other side? And what are they doing here? Chen Chen carefully leaned forward to observe. He could already see someone walking towards the camp entrance and jumping over a landmine. There were 12 people, all wearing bulletproof vests. Looking at their bloated appearance, it was obvious that they also had bulletproof plates installed. The legendary level 4 armor. This set of equipment can almost be said to be able to walk sideways in the land of northern Myanmar, because according to NATO level 4 standards, it can almost block all close-range direct fire of 7.62 and 5.56 millimeters bullets. Attacking the so-called army that does not even have level 2 bulletproof vests is just like heavy cavalry bullying unarmored infantry. What's even more exaggerated is that they each hold a 416 Hong Kong dollars with an optical sight, and the last two people are carrying L115A3 and M82A1 respectively. Is it that exaggerated? Are the anti-material sniper rifles coming? Who are you going to hit? Before Chen Chen could take a closer look, a noisy sound suddenly rang out. Then, a voice that definitely did not belong to the other three people suddenly appeared in his ears. Can you speak English? The radio was hacked. The Russian stuff doesn't have automatic frequency hopping function, so they directly hacked into the channel. I can't beat him. It's impossible to beat him. Chen Chen simply put down his gun and walked out of the bunker. People who have not undergone special operations training cannot possibly know that the lower limit of a team's strength is determined by its military quality and tactical level, but the upper limit is definitely determined by its electronic warfare capability. What the other side demonstrated was extremely strong electronic and modern combat capabilities. Invading the channel is both a gesture of goodwill and a demonstration. I can speak English. Chen Chen answered simply in English. That's great. We have no ill intentions. We belong to the Chaiseri Defense Company and are carrying out a multinational mission in Myanmar. The Wananai camp was originally one of our targets. Today, we discovered that a conflict had occurred here, so we rushed over. I didn't expect you to clear out the entire camp. Amazing. You guys are so strong. Your tactics are top-notch. We observed you from a distance for a long time and only approached after we were sure there was no risk of enemy identification. Sorry for invading your communication channel, but we just want to communicate as quickly as possible. By the way, what kind of cannon did you use? An earthen howitzer? It's really amazing. You are the most incredible team I have ever seen. The leading man had already taken his hand away from the gun and was walking towards Chen Chen while chattering incessantly. But Chen Chen's mind was not at all on his selfless compliments. Chaiseri. This name suddenly popped into his mind, bringing back memories of his previous life. This company is not a low-level mercenary group, nor is it a simple PMC. This is a defense company located in Thailand, a serious defense company that can supply armored vehicles to the Thai military. Most of their employees are retired soldiers from Thailand's Underwater Demolition Assault Force, also known as the Thai Navy SEALs, who are known for their martial ethics and fierce firepower. In the previous life, they participated in a four-nation joint operation on behalf of Thailand, and their combat power was amazing, even not inferior to the brigade he was in at the time. Are they carrying out a multinational mission here? Is there anything big going to happen recently? Chen Chen was confused, but at least he could confirm that the other party should really have no ill intentions. What a joke. It's impossible for others to be mean to you. In front of them, I am now like a little chicken under the feet of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So he walked forward, shook hands with the leading captain, and briefly introduced the situation on the scene. This was a sign of weakness to some extent, but it was also a survival wisdom in the cracks. However, the other party did not mean to make things difficult for him. He just chatted with him briefly, continued to say a lot of compliments, left his contact information, and then left. Before leaving, the captain left a message. You will definitely contact me. Come and go in a hurry. Baffling. Seeing how enthusiastically he praised, I thought he was here to poach people. Logically speaking, if Chaiseri dared to recruit him, he might just go there directly. If he joined Chaiseri, he could get citizenship. To save the country in a roundabout way, I could first obtain a Thai identity and then find a way to immigrate back to China. But now, this opportunity has not fallen on my head. Brother Chen, what are they doing? Bao Chi ran out of the bunker and looked at Chaiseri, who was going away with envy on his face, and asked curiously. He didn't understand the equipment, but he could see the difference between those people and the few peasants on his side. The Thai Chaiseri Company. You can temporarily understand it as one of the top mercenary teams. They're just going to take a look, nothing else. Let's go and search quickly. Chase Li is here, and I guess there will be others coming soon. I understand. Then I will go help Brother Li too. Go ahead. Chen Chen replied. He was no longer too worried about the safety of the perimeter. If it was scanned by Chase Li, any danger should be eliminated. But what exactly are they here for? Let's not talk about what they were doing in northern Myanmar and Myanmar. It was really strange that they came here just to say hello. This doubt kept turning around in Chen Chen's mind. He vaguely realized that he might be involved in some incident. Or maybe something big will happen in northern Myanmar, or at least in Myanmar, but given his current position, it is impossible for him to obtain relevant information. Let's just do what is in front of him first. Chen Chen hesitated for a moment, then joined the group that was searching the corpses. Within a few minutes, he had searched all the corpses on the ground. Not much to gain, just some poor fellows. Just as he was about to call on others to start moving the spoils in disappointment, Li Bang, who was searching for the bodies of officers in the officers' barracks in the distance, suddenly shouted, Brother Chen, there's a cellar here. Chen Chen was greatly encouraged. A cellar? A treasure trove. Of course, it could also be an underground bunker. He rushed over immediately, signaled Li Bang to step back, and prepared to start checking the situation in the cellar. The cellar was not locked, but the bolt was fastened from the outside, which basically eliminated the risk of someone hiding underneath. However, we still cannot take it lightly. Chen Chen pulled out the bolt and then quickly stepped back. There was no gunfire, but he keenly heard the sound of movement below. Anyone? Chen Chen frowned. He started shouting, "Come out, everyone down there! Lay down your weapons and surrender. I won't repeat myself a second time. If you don't come out, I'm going to throw a grenade. I won't get close to the hole again. I will destroy the door panels with bullets. You won't have any chance to fight back. Once I open fire, you won't survive." Counting down now, 10, 9. Chen Chen is also experienced in psychological warfare. Before he could count to 8, he heard someone talking downstairs. "Don't shoot. We'll be out right away." "Woman, don't move. Come out again after my instructions." Chen Chen yelled. He immediately signaled Li Bang to retreat with him until they were 30 meters outside the door. After aiming his gun, he shouted, "Now take off all your clothes and come out with your hands above your head. If I see any clothes on you, even just a piece of cloth, I will shoot immediately." There is a reason for his caution. These are the lessons learned by his ancestors with their blood. Soon, the first pair of arms appeared at the entrance of the cellar. Then a naked woman came out. "Get down on the ground now, get down on the ground. Put your hands behind your back with your fingers spread out. Let me see your hands." The woman's expression showed both fear and humiliation, but Chen Chen didn't care. "You lost consciousness when you saw a woman? This is a battlefield. Anything that moves could be an enemy." A few seconds later, a second woman appeared. The moment he saw her, Chen Chen's pupils suddenly shrank. "White people? Why are there white people here? There shouldn't be any white people here. Theoretically, the Wananai camp wouldn't be so stupid as to attack white people, and white people wouldn't be so stupid as to travel to such a place." But she showed up, and in a way that no one expected. "You will definitely contact me." Chen Chen remembered what the captain in Chasely said, and now he knew what this sentence meant. The people in Chasely must know what happened. We have to find them and ask them. Well, in that case, this woman must be taken back. Number 2, find some ropes to tie them up. Just tie their hands behind their backs. Remember, they are not women now. They are enemies. Bao Qi nodded seriously. Although he was a naive boy, he would not fail to understand the situation at this time. After he had deftly tied the two men together, Chen Chen walked forward to question them. "What's down there?" As soon as these words came out, the two women who were forced to lie on the ground were stunned at the same time. Perhaps they thought that Chen Chen would first ask something like, "Who are you?" "Down there. There's nothing down there. Just a cell." The native woman answered, while the white man remained silent. Chen Chen nodded, turned around and said to Bao Qi, "Number 2, throw an offensive grenade down there." The difference between offensive grenades and defensive grenades is that the former mainly rely on shockwaves to kill, while the latter mainly rely on fragments to kill. In a confined space, the killing effects of the two are comparable, but offensive grenades cause less damage to the environment. Without any hesitation, Bao Qi unscrewed the bottom cover, pulled the trigger, and threw the grenade down. The grenade exploded with a loud bang. After the smoke cleared, Chen Chen said, "Go down and take a look." Bao Qi jumped into the cellar with a gun, and soon his voice came up. "Not just a cell, there are 2 spaces underneath, one of which is a storage room." Chen Chen did not hesitate. With a bang, a bullet opened the back of the local woman's head. Shot at close range, she didn't even have the chance to say a word. Chen Chen keenly noticed that after the gunshot, the white man's face was first filled with fear, but then a hint of satisfaction emerged. Except for Bao Qi, the other two were shocked by Chen Chen's decisiveness. Sure, Dakai couldn't help asking, "How could he be killed? Isn't there anyone down there?" She lied. She said there was only one cell down there. They could move around freely, so it's impossible for them not to know the structure down there. She's hiding when there's no need to hide, so there's something wrong with her. Understood. No one questioned it anymore. In fact, Sure Dakai didn't question it either. He just felt it was strange. Number 2, what's in the storage room? Chen Chen continued to ask. There were only a few guns, empty guns, both long and short guns, and some other things, but I couldn't understand them. Then don't look at it yet. Bring up everything you can move. Do you need help? No, you guys stay on guard. I can move. A few minutes later, Bao Qi came out with something in his hand. Chen Chen took one look and was immediately overjoyed. There is nothing special about 2 M16s, nor is they very useful. For pistols, 1 Desert Eagle, 1 P226, and 2 1911s, which can just solve the problem of the 4-person group having no pistols. But the bigger surprise was the thing that looked like a scope that he was holding. Pulsar Challenger series of head-mounted monocular night vision devices. It should be a very old model, and its performance is probably not very good, but it is also a night vision device. This thing is so useful. Chen Chen suppressed his joy and asked Bao Qi to put the things on the ground one by one. M16, a pistol, a night vision goggles, a set of bulletproof vests, a helmet, 2 watches, some banknotes, and 2 small gold bars. Scattered here and there, it was obvious that the leading officer's private storage room was below. His life was indeed quite shabby, but on the other hand, he seemed to be quite ambitious. After all, there wasn't much cash and valuables, but there was a lot of tactical equipment. Search again. If there's a cellar, there must be a second one. We haven't found their ammunition depot yet, so theoretically, there should be one. Understood, I'll search again. So, after more than 10 minutes, the second cellar was searched. Just as Chen Chen thought, the second cellar contained the ammunition of the bandit camp. But not much. There were only a few boxes of 7.62 or bullets, half a box of grenades, and a few homemade mines. The search is almost over. Number 1, go drive the car to the road below. Number 2, go hide the guns. We are ready to retreat. At the command, everyone started moving. and Chen Chen himself went to the camp gate and began to dismantle the traps and mines set up on the road. This did not take him too much time. After all, most of the mines were not well made, so if he was not sure, he could just fire 2 shots from a distance to trigger them. After Li Bang drove the car downstairs, the 4 of them began to load the spoils into the car. The stuff was not too much, but not too little either. It took more than half an hour to load it. After the loading was completed, Chen Chen picked out some clothes and put them on the white woman who was still lying on the ground. Thanks. The woman spoke. Chen Chen refused to communicate. He just pushed the woman into the car and asked Li Bang and Shi Dakai to guard her in the middle. Next, you don't have to take a U-turn anymore. They went straight along the road, past the Myanmar Army's Mungku camp, and headed towards Menka. At this time, in the office on the 2nd floor of Wanfeng Casino, a fully armed man was sitting carelessly on the sofa, smoking a cigar, and said to the fat man behind the desk, your intelligence this time is not accurate. The people who attacked Wan and I camp are not just trash. They're well-trained. Well, at least their leader is well-trained. It took them less than 40 minutes from launching the attack to completely ending the battle. All the bandits in the Wan and I camp were wiped out. Not a single one survived. Are you kidding me? The fat man in charge of task distribution, or Peng Shuqing, jumped up from his chair. He looked at the man opposite with disbelief, and the fat on his face was trembling slightly. Are you sure it was them who did it? How many people were there? 4 people, exactly as you described. There's no doubt about it. Because of your intelligence, we planned to start the mission early. We set out for Wan and I at 5 a.m. and heard artillery fire from there around 5:20 a.m. By the time we arrived at 5:35 a.m., they had already started to break into the camp and clean up the battlefield. They're a very professional team with rich CQB experience. Their proficiency in the use of projectiles is even comparable to that of the special forces of some small countries. More importantly, judging from the traces left on the battlefield, their entire combat process was mature and tight. They first bombarded with homemade artillery, then suppressed with rifles, and snipers continued to kill high-value targets. The bandits in Wan and I's camp failed to establish ODA from beginning to end. Forget it. You don't even know what ODA is. In short, they are definitely the elite among the elite. I think as a mercenary, this is definitely a team worth recruiting. But I understand. I was wrong before. Peng Shuqing nodded slowly and frankly admitted his mistake. But will their actions have any impact on you? I heard that you were originally planning to rescue a hostage. The man shook his head and replied, it has no impact. The hostages should survive. Maybe soon, the captain of that team will call me. Okay, I have to go. This is not your fault this time. But if there are intelligence errors next time, we will have to reconsider our cooperation agreement. Clear. Peng Shuqing nodded again. Then he picked up the satellite phone and dialed a number in front of the man. Lao He, go to Wan and I camp. I want the latest information to find out how this battle is being fought. Now, right away. There's no one there anymore. All the bandits inside are gone. I'm not kidding you. Yes, only 4 of us. The 4 of them killed more than 20 people. Jaeon never thought that she would be rescued in this way. In other words, she had never thought that she could be rescued. During the time she was kidnapped, she negotiated with the leader of the kidnappers countless times and confessed her identity as a reporter. But such communication was obviously meaningless as the other party had no intention of letting her go. Yes, who would care about the life and death of a freelance journalist with no background, no resources, and even no money? Rather than releasing him and adding unnecessary risks to yourself, it is better to keep him as a star fury and kill him when you get tired of him. After all, this land is already rife with crimes related to human trafficking, and as long as the person killed is not an important person, it is unlikely to attract any attention. She was desperate at one point, but also accepted her own fate at one point. I do have some regrets, but they are not that heavy. In the final analysis, this was all my own choice. What noble purpose did I have? I was just a desperate reporter who decided to take a chance and make a big news story to turn things around. When you set out, didn't you think that it wouldn't matter if you died? And after arriving here, my condition has indeed been sliding towards death. But she could never have expected that this scale of death, which had already tilted to the bottom, would be righted in this way. This is great luck. They didn't come to save me, they just saved me by chance. Jia took a deep breath, and then she said, thank you, you saved my life. The other 3 couldn't understand her English, but Chen Chen could, but he was too lazy to answer. He had no intention of having any contact with this woman. If Chaseley needed this woman, he could ask them for some money. The scene was a little awkward for a moment. The woman was stunned for a moment, then suddenly spoke again in awkward Burmese. Thank you. Now no one understands. Seeing the 2 people beside her showing puzzled expressions, Jia couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. She wanted to say something else, but Chen Chen in the front seat spoke at this moment. We are not here to save you, but someone does want to save you. If you want to thank us, then tell me who you are and what happened. The reason for knowing this information is essentially to have a certain initiative in the subsequent negotiations with Chaseley. If you want to sell goods, how can you not know about your own goods? What if this woman is the daughter of a wealthy family? It shouldn't be too much to ask for 18 million yuan, right? Finally hearing the familiar English, Jia's expression immediately became lively. She couldn't wait to introduce herself and her experience, but Chen Chen's expression became visibly disappointed. Good man, another poor fellow. Where do so many poor fellows come from? He turned his head again with little interest, interrupting Jia's endless chatter. Don't tell me any more. Now tell me an exact number. How much are you worth? Jia was stunned. This question is really difficult to answer. Theoretically speaking, I am not worth a penny. Even the information that Chen Chen just said someone wants to save me was the first time she heard it. I probably can't give you much money in return. But believe me, after leaving here, I will quickly become an influential reporter. I will write the most exciting investigative report and become a rising star in the freelance journalist industry. By then, the rewards I can give you will definitely not be measured by money. You are mercenaries, right? I can give you more positive reports so that you can gain greater fame and respect in this industry. We don't need it. Chen Chen interrupted Jia immediately. As a mercenary group, being famous is not a bad thing, but if the growth of fame exceeds the growth of strength, it is not a good thing. Noticing Chen Chen's attitude, Jia shut up tactfully. But before she was quiet for a few minutes, she suddenly asked, "Why did you kill that woman?" "Why?" "Because she was in league with the bandits, because she wasn't telling the truth, because she was obviously a guard watching you?" Chen Chen could give the correct answer, but he just replied coldly, "There are no laws here. I can kill whoever I want." Very good reason. Jia felt the threat from Chen Chen's words and finally shut up. She didn't ask Chen Chen any more questions, and she no longer cared about who he would give herself to. Anyway, the situation won't be worse than that dungeon. So who cares? The people in the car fell silent again, and half an hour later, the four-man team entered Myanmar. Chen Chen was not in a hurry to return to the hotel. Under the current circumstances, it was no longer suitable for permanent residence. He asked Bao Chi to park the car on the side of the road, then found a pay phone and called the contact information left by Captain Chasley. "Sir, I have the person you want." He said it bluntly. "I'll be there soon. By the way, just call me Jackal." "Okay, I'll wait for you at the entrance of Ship City Hospital, Mr. Jackal." After hanging up the phone, Chen Chen waited for 10 minutes, and the Jackal from Chasley arrived at the Ship City Hospital. As soon as they met, he took the initiative to extend his hand to Chen Chen. "A great success. Welcome back. What should I call you?" Chen Chen glanced at the words Shiptown on the Shiptown Hospital and answered casually, "Just call me Shipwreck." "Cool name. Did you bring that woman with you?" The Jackal was smiling all the time, which made him look more like a businessman rather than an elite warrior. "In the car, make your offer, Mr. Jackal." "She's worthless. She's just a journalist with no future. We wanted to save her just for the sake of convenience. But you brought her back. I think $5,000 is fine." The Jackal spread out his hands, with a cunning look on his face, which is unique to Thai people. 50,000. Chen Chen said calmly. "Then you can kill her, or raise her as a star fury, or sell her to a wealthy man who needs organs. It's up to you. But organ matching is not easy to do, and she can't sell for 50,000. The price was too high, and Chen Chen sighed secretly. "But you want her to be useful. I don't care what you want her to be useful for. 30,000 US dollars is reasonable, right?" "No, she's useful, but not useful enough to be worth $30,000. 30,000 US dollars. You may have rescued her. We have never seen her. We just took down the one in I camp." As soon as these words came out, the Jackal's expression finally changed. He seemed to be weighing the pros and cons carefully. After thinking for a few seconds, he finally said, "We really don't have that much cash, you know. This is just a deal between us, not a deal between you and Chasley Company. How about this? You can go to our warehouse and pick out some of the equipment you need. Level 3 body armor and helmets from Armor Express. I'll give you 4 sets. How about that? You know, this thing is very expensive in northern Myanmar. Level 4 bulletproof vest with hard bulletproof plates." Chen Chen bargained again. "That's only 2 sets, and without helmets, it's not enough for us to use ourselves. 4 sets with helmets. There are at least 12 of you. It's impossible that you don't have any reserves. Can't you just go back and report the damage? You are Chinese, right? So you can bargain? Deal." The Jackal's hand shook vigorously, and a deal was struck. Chen Chen simply gestured to Shirdakai to release the man. Watching his movements, Jackal asked curiously, "Don't you really want to know the story behind her? Maybe her story is worth a lot of money." Chen Chen smiled, shook his head, and replied, "Mr. Jackal, 4 sets of Armor Express level 4 body armor plus bulletproof plates are worth at least $80,000 on the black market. Isn't that valuable enough? No matter how valuable her story is, it's not as valuable as my life." The bulletproof vests promised by the Jackal were delivered very quickly. It was obvious that they not only had sufficient reserves, but also had a very mature business in Myanmar. Otherwise, they would not be able to maintain a stable warehouse without being targeted by the military here. Judging from this situation, what Chaizili did in Myanmar and northern Myanmar was definitely not a one-time business. So the behind-the-scenes story of the white woman Jia that they talked about seemed a bit suspicious. However, no matter how suspicious it is, Chen Chen will not waver. His principle is very simple. Never interfere in other people's affairs before he has established himself. Even if there is enormous wealth hidden behind that thing, I will not be tempted at all. He knows very well what kind of money he can earn and what kind of money he cannot earn. So after getting the helmet and bulletproof vest, Chen Chen completed the cut with Jia cleanly and neatly. He completely ignored the pleading in the other's eyes, threw the 4 sets of equipment into the car, and drove away without hesitation. Although the other 3 were puzzled, they did not bother to ask more questions. Their attention was completely drawn to the equipment that was a little too advanced for them. "Brother Chun, these things are all ours?" Bao Chi asked excitedly. "It's all ours. It's a pretty good thing. How do you know it's good?" Bao Chi asked. "How should I answer you?" Raven 2.0 tactical vest from Armor Express, with HESCO 4800 level 4 bulletproof plates, and then ACH tactical helmet from Armor Source. Armor Express has a whole range of products, and the bulletproof vests are military grade. They didn't use AE civilian products to fool us. Chasley is really very kind, but it also shows that the woman is indeed worth the price. "Brother Chun, I don't understand." Bao Chi smiled bitterly and said, "Can you just tell me what these things can actually do? Like, can they really stop bullets? I heard that wearing a bulletproof vest is the same as not wearing one. Even if you can't penetrate it, you can still kill it with a bullet." That's pure bullshit. Chen Chen shook his head and did not answer immediately. In fact, there are quite a few misunderstandings among ordinary people about the functions of bulletproof vests and bulletproof helmets. Some people believe that wearing a bulletproof vest means they are invincible and can charge into a hail of bullets without any problems, while another group of people believe that this thing is just a psychological comfort and that they will still die if hit by a bullet. In fact, both views are inaccurate. Take bulletproof vests as an example. The 4th level hardplate can block bullets from almost all standard rifles on the market, and in most cases will not cause any damage to the human body. Even the 3rd level armor can basically block the standard 7.62 by 39 AK bullet. The same goes for helmets. NIJ level helmets can easily block bullets from M16 and AK-47 at medium and long distances. The most exaggerated Russian Alcan helmet can even defend against large caliber armor-piercing bullets in CQB. Of course, any defense has its limits. A .50 BMG can crush even gods. So to put it simply, the equipment they have now can basically defend against rifles, but if the opponent has a heavy machine gun, they still can't beat it. Chen Chen briefly gave the 3 people in the car some protection knowledge, and the 3 of them nodded repeatedly. The most excited person was Bao Qi. He was a reckless man to begin with, and now that he heard that he would no longer have to be afraid of rifles, he couldn't wait to put on his armor and rush out to try a few. The calmest person was sure Dakai, but Chen Chen also saw his relieved expression. Yes, one more piece of armor means one more life. Who dares to say that he is not afraid of death? Bao Qi couldn't wait to put on the bulletproof vest and try it on. Sure Dakai, who was standing beside him, was silent for a few minutes, and suddenly raised an urgent question that Chen Chen subconsciously ignored. Chen Chen, we can't sell all this stuff in the car for a while, so we have to find a place to put it, right? We can't just leave it in the hotel. Chen Chen was stunned for a moment, and then came back to his senses from the joy of completing the task. That's right. There are at least 2 problems facing me now. The first is to find a long-term place to stay, and the second is to deal with the spoils. It's easy to sell the small items, but it's really hard to sell this huge pile of guns and ammunition. After thinking for a moment, he said, let's go find the wooden ghost again. They receive orders every day, so it's impossible for them to not have shipping channels. The worst that can happen is that we lose a little and let them be middlemen for once. This is the best solution. On the one hand, it can solve our problem, and on the other hand, it can be regarded as a gesture of goodwill to them. Our foundation is still too shallow. It would be good to find a backer anyway. Yes, I thought so too. Sure Dakai immediately agreed. Li Bang heard their conversation and cleverly turned the steering wheel and drove towards Wanfeng restaurant. After arriving at the place, Chen Chen asked the 3 people to stay on guard in the car, while he went up to the 2nd floor with ease and entered the fat man's office. Still a warm welcome, but this time, the fat man took the initiative to speak and exchange titles with Chen Chen. Chen Chen knew that his name was Peng Shuqing, but he still used the code name Sunken Ship. That, oh sir, the battle you guys fought has scared the whole Minka to death. 4 people took down Wan Hinai. I heard that even Captain Chen is asking who did it. But don't worry, this is a good thing. Captain Chen was originally planning to defeat Wan Hinai, so you guys helped him a lot. I've already made the arrangements for you. The management committee has agreed that you can deal with the spoils on your own, but you still have to give them 20%, as this is customary. Hearing his words, Chen Chen secretly sighed that he had made the right choice. I started by doing you a favor, and I really needed this favor. If Peng Shuqing hadn't reminded me, how could I know the ins and outs of this? If I really acted without thinking, it might bring me trouble. So he also answered readily. Thank you very much, Boss Peng. If possible, I would like to ask Wanfeng Group to help sell this batch of goods, and we will split the remaining profits 50-50. There's no need to split it 50-50. Just follow the rules. We'll take 30%, you guys take 50%, and then 20% goes to the management committee. Peng Shuqing waved his hand, showing that he was determined to do the favor to the end. After all, such a strong team is definitely not the small gun group that was born and died in the past. They could do it for a long time. What's more, now this team has also connected with Chase Li, and the future development is even more difficult to say. When it comes to investing, you still have to be bold. But now I have a question. Do you want to sell your goods in packages or individually? If you sell them in a package, we will give you an estimate directly, and you don't have to worry about it after the payment is made. If you sell them individually, it will take some time to get the money back. Do I need to choose? Chen Chen said without hesitation. I'll pick some and pack them out. That's no problem. I'll arrange for someone to go down with you to order the goods. I'm not an expert in this area. If you're not satisfied with anything, just come to me. I promise to solve it for you. This statement gave Chen Chen a little more wiggle room, but Chen Chen didn't plan to use it. It's okay to reap some benefits of the first battle and take advantage of something. But if you take too many advantages, you have to consider whether you can afford it. After all, the Wood Ghosts are a violent organization. Are they really as gentle and courteous as they appear? Stop talking nonsense. The two chatted for a while, and Chen Chen asked Peng Shuqing to help find a place to stay. Peng Shuqing solved the problem on the spot. Of course, Chen Chen paid for it himself. Everything was arranged properly, and Chen Chen did not stay any longer. He followed the people arranged by Peng Shuqing downstairs and immediately took the spoils that needed to be sold from the car. There were many people watching around, but no one was tactful enough to come forward and ask. However, even if they didn't ask the real person, a piece of news had slowly spread in Munka. Wan He is gone. He was killed by 4 people, and none of the 4 people who killed Wan Hino died. Everyone looked at the 4 people at the entrance of Wanfeng Hotel with admiration in their eyes, but Chen Chen didn't care to pay attention to them. No matter how famous I am, they will never do anything to me. What a joke. We are mercenaries, not gangsters. A mercenary's reputation is earned through missions, not through internal fighting. Right now, Chen Chen is most concerned about one thing. How much can these things be sold for? 2 Type 56 to 1 light machine guns. For Type 56 submachine guns, 16 Type 81 submachine guns. For boxes of 7.62 or bullets, 46 magazines, a Chinese-made unknown brand bulletproof vest, and never mind, I won't report them one by one. Let me be frank. These things are not worth much. I can only pay you in RMB. A Type 81 rifle is 3,000. A Type 56 rifle is 1,800, and both machine guns are in poor condition. I'll give you 10,000 renminbi for the whole thing. A bullet is 6 renminbi, and there are 4,800 bullets here. The total is 100,000 renminbi. How about you give me 50,000 renminbi? In fact, the most valuable things are the PKMS and those pistols and the night vision goggles, but you don't sell them. 100,000? That's about it. Chen Chen remembered that he had seen an example in 2018, when the Type 95 rifles dumped out from the Kokong military camp were only sold for 3,000 yuan each. After all, this is a first-hand source of goods. If you compare it with the price of buying a gun on the black market, you're just being a gangster and making a profit. No problem, let's do it, Chen Chen said without hesitation. Then take the money. Without any pause, 5 stacks of banknotes were thrown into Chen Chen's hands. The transaction was completed without any delay. He opened the window and threw the money to Shidakai. At that moment, the man in charge of the transaction saw the AE bulletproof vest on the car seat. His expression changed, and he walked up to Chen Chen and whispered, "Are you selling those bulletproof vests? I'll trade you UERM's level 3 armor, 1 for 1, and I'll give you an extra 20,000 for each set. Do you want it? 20,000 US dollars. Chisley won't say anything. How about I help you settle their relationship? Forget it. I really can't afford to offend them." Chen Chen was not surprised that the man could recognize at a glance that this was Chisley's thing. After all, in Munka, only their equipment was so luxurious. Hearing his words, the man nodded. "I understand. Let's work together again next time if there's a chance." After that, he simply turned around and left, as if he had never asked. The spoils were sold for 50,000 renminbi. I can't say I'm very satisfied with this amount, but it's pretty close. After getting in the car, the first thing Chen Chen did was to divide the money. He knew that he definitely did not have the domineering aura that would make others bow down to him. If the pressure of survival was what kept the team going before, then later, when all the problems were basically solved and life became stable, the only way to maintain a stable relationship would be by relying on money. The world is bustling with people seeking profit, and the world is bustling with people seeking profit. This is an eternal truth. Today is the first time we are dividing the money, so we need to set the rules. We are a startup team, so we won't follow the rules of a big company. From now on, all the profits we get from our team's missions, whether it's spoils of war or commissions, will be distributed according to our shares. I'm the leader. I'll take 2 portions, and everyone else will get 1 portion each. So this time, each of you will get 10,000, and I'll get 20,000. Is that okay? No problem. The other 3 answered in unison. 10,000 renminbi is not a lot of money, because they earn 1,000 yuan a month fighting in the Kokong Allied Forces and can save 10,000 yuan in a year. But if I say it is less, that would be against my will. After all, it took them just over a week to earn the money, and although there were risks involved, they were reduced to the lowest level thanks to Chen Chen's planning. Can a normal mercenary earn 10,000? You're dreaming. The most money a mercenary can make in his life is probably the pension after his death. Not to mention, this is just the spoils of war money. Once the commission comes in, he can get another 2,000 US dollars. What else are you dissatisfied with? Looking at the smiles on everyone's faces, Chen Chen thought for a moment and continued. One more thing to add is that all of our current equipment, except for guns, is public goods and needs to be distributed according to usage needs. For example, we now have 4 sets of level 4 bulletproof vests. It's no problem for each person to have 1 set, but if new people join us later, there won't be enough bulletproof vests. At that time, we will have to distribute them according to the mission requirements. Assaulters wear heavy armor, snipers wear light armor, and in extreme cases, they don't wear any. Is that okay? No problem. This was a very reasonable request, and no one else objected. However, after a brief pause, Shidakai spoke again. Chen Chen, speaking of this issue, I think we still need to discuss the source of these public equipment. As we grow bigger, equipment will also be a big problem. We can't always let new people bring their own equipment. That means we have to buy equipment ourselves. And buying equipment costs money. Should we set aside a portion of our profits in the future to be used specifically as equipment purchase expenses? Company operating expenses. Chen Chen described his thoughts accurately. Yes, it's the operating expenses. Shidakai nodded immediately. We don't need to consider this for now, but your idea is very good. Let's confirm it first, and then decide the specific operating fee ratio based on the actual situation. Until then, we can vote on every expense we make together. How about that? No problem. Bao Qi and Li Bang couldn't come up with any constructive suggestions, so I just blindly agreed with their ideas. So, the operational framework was determined. There was only one last question left. Shouldn't our regiment have a name? Li Bang asked. Yes, it's a bluff. Bao Qi immediately joined in the fun. Chen Chen shook his head repeatedly. There's no need to use a scary name. In places like this, the more ordinary and simple the name, the more professional and powerful it appears. Look at Chisley. Do their names sound intimidating? Even Mugawe has changed its name to Wanfeng Group. We still need to learn from their experience. I think it would be better to call it Ping and Private Insurance. How about that? Everyone fell silent. Chen Chen looked at them awkwardly, and the 4 of them looked at each other. Too ordinarily, Bang spoke first. Yeah, this thing is a bit too minimalist. I don't think so either. Maybe if it gets bigger in the future, it could be changed to Ping and Group. Shidakai said seriously. Then forget it. Ping and Group is absolutely not an option. After thinking for a moment, A name suddenly popped up in Chen Chen's mind. How about calling Dongfeng Private Security East Wind? What does it mean? That has too many meanings, but the one I want to use is Dongfeng Express and Mission Accomplished. Can't. That's it, Dongfeng Private Security, Dongfeng Corps. Sounds good. The name was decided, and the four-member micro-mercenary group was finally officially established. Chen Chen didn't know how much uncertainty was waiting for them in the future, but at least the meaning of this name was still very good. The car drove all the way to the residence arranged by Peng Shuqing. It was an abandoned small building in the southeast corner of Munka. It was said that it was an industry left by a Chinese who had opened a supermarket before, but later he went to Maiwadi and the building was abandoned. This building cannot be said to have any protective capabilities, but it has a superior geographical location, a wide view, and can meet the current needs of the four-person team. After entering the yard of the small building, the four of them began to distribute their equipment on the spot, without having time to clean up the weeds and garbage on the ground. The cash seized from the camp amounted to nearly 40,000 RBM plus 8,000 US dollars, which was simply divided according to the distribution principle. A Rolex Ref 114300 and 2 gold bars were considered trophies, which we will not divide for the time being and will just throw aside. Pulsar's Edge GS1 by 20 head-mounted night vision goggles. This thing is a rare item, having only been launched on the market at the end of 2008. Although its performance is extremely average, the fact that he could get one in northern Myanmar was beyond Chen Chen's expectations. Needless to say, it will definitely belong to Chen Chen. After all, he is the strongest shooter in the team, and his need for vision is much higher than others. ACH Helmet plus Pulsar Night Vision Goggles, perfect. There were several pistols. Chen Chen originally wanted to pick a P226, but when he took a closer look, he realized that this was a useless P226. It was just an illegal copy of the MA6 made by the Burmese, not the original one. It would be better not to use it, so he decisively picked a 1911 that looked less worn and just used it. The Desert Eagle naturally belonged to Bao Qi. This kid really lived up to his name, whether on the battlefield or in life. He was like a treasure. He thought he had picked up a great bargain, but in fact the bullets for that thing were hard to find and the actual combat effect was not good. It was just used to scare people. Next, there was nothing to share about grenades and the like, so Chen Chen assigned the PKMS to Bao Qi. He is definitely not the best machine gunner, but letting him be a machine gunner is better than playing other positions. Li Bang was also assigned equipment by Chen Chen, a carrying belt made by a Chinese copycat factory with a huge number of attachment points, the kind specially used by blasters. As for Shi Dakai, he doesn't have a clear position yet, so he takes the SVD to supplement Chen Chen, the accurate shooter. Everything was ready. Bao Qi put on his equipment and walked back and forth in front of the four people with a proud look on his face. The way he held the gun in his hand really looked like the real deal. Reborn Shi Dakai sighed in a low voice. Really? Li Bang nodded slightly. A similar idea suddenly popped up in their minds. It turns out that people are different, and wars are also different. And it was he who changed all of this in just a few days. Chen Chen. It took the team of four several hours to finally tidy up the small building to a level where it could be barely habitable. Lying on the bed that still smelled musty, Chen Chen finally felt at ease. The mercenary group is not completely on the right track yet, but at least it's off to a good start. The first battle was fought beautifully and with full display of characteristics. After that, Mu Gui should really take it seriously. If there are more small orders, he will consider subcontracting them directly to the four-man group or the Dongfeng Corps. This was definitely a day worth celebrating. Chen Chen bought some groceries out of his own pocket and prepared an authentic veterans family dinner, which made the three of them shed tears. This is so delicious. Bao Qilian ate 3 bowls of rice and finally put down his chopsticks until he was so full that he could hardly stand. Is this good? Chen Chen was greatly surprised. You know, although he is a shareholder of Veteran Barbecue, the dishes he makes have always been the most complained about. It's really delicious, much better than what I make at home. Shi Dakai rarely agreed with Bao Qi's opinion, and Li Bang proved his position with practical actions. He finished 5 bowls of rice and almost scraped the pot. Chen Chen couldn't help but hold his forehead. It seems like you haven't eaten any good pork. It's really hard for you. In fact, to be honest, the food in northern Myanmar, especially in Kokong, is similar to that in southwestern China, but the main reason is that the area is too poor. The living standards of ordinary people are still at the level of China in the 1990s. It is good enough to fill their stomachs, so naturally they will not pursue the taste of the dishes too much. No wonder they could taste the flavor of delicacies from land and sea even when eating hand-torn chicken. Before Chen Chen had time to sigh, Bao Qi spoke again. It would be great if I could bring my parents over in the future. They probably haven't eaten this dish before. Just stop talking nonsense. Before he could finish his words, Li Bang interrupted him. Your father was a platoon leader in the National Democratic Front after all. It's impossible that he has never eaten this. My family has never eaten such delicious food in their entire lives. I don't know how they are doing now. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere immediately became a little heavy. Yes, the 3 of them escaped, but their families are still in Kokong. At that time, in 2009, the telephone network in Kokong was not yet fully popularized, so there was no way to contact them. The situation, there was a complete black box to the 3 of them. It's impossible not to worry, but what can they do? If we go back rashly, the only outcome will be death. Chen Chen sighed. He wanted to persuade her, but he didn't know where to start. What surprised him was that at this time, it was Shi Dakai who stood up. Don't say that. I figured it out during this period of time. Whether we come out or not, the situation of our family is actually the same. What Chen Chen said before was wrong. Even if we stay there, we can't exchange our lives for the lives of our family members. If we die, our family members will die too. You may not understand Bai Sawaching's style of doing things, but I know it very well. Hearing this, Chen Chen's heart trembled. Indeed, It was impossible for Bai Suoching to leave any threat to himself. It would be better to expect Myanmar to agree to Kokang's independence than to expect him to kill one and spare the whole family. He nodded subconsciously, and the other two also came to their senses. Bao Qi asked Shi Dakai in a teasing tone, "Captain Shi, have you figured it out?" Shi Dakai smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Don't call me company commander. I'm a shitty company commander." I finally had a sudden realization. I was just a private, but they promoted me to be a company commander in charge of dozens of people. I should have known what it meant at that time. I'm sorry, brothers. If it weren't for Chen Chen, none of us would have survived. Chen Chen, I'm older than you, so I can't call you brother like them, but I'll call you brother today. Brother Chen, thank you. Don't talk about that. Chen Chen waved his hand quickly and replied, "The past is the past. Let's work hard in the future. When the east wind blows, it will be time for you to go home." That's right. Our Dongfeng Corps will definitely be able to stand up. Bao Qi raised the coke in his hand, and the others followed suit. Under the moonlight, the sound of the wind gradually picked up. The next morning, Chen Chen's biological clock woke him up on time. According to the schedule, there are a total of 2 things to do today. The first thing is to go to Menglang Temple to collect commissions. The bounty for Wan and I was issued by the monks of Menglang Zen Temple on behalf of the residents. The mission was over, but Mugue was not a middleman and had no obligation to collect the money, so he had to make the trip himself. The other thing is to retrieve the 2 hell cannons. According to Bao Qi, the 2 guns had shown signs of deformation after 2 rounds of firing, but they were not yet scrapped. If they were brought back and patched together, they could be used twice more and should not be wasted. Chen Chen took the money and went to renew the lease of the pickup truck for 3 days. He had originally planned to buy it outright, but when he asked the price, he found out that this piece of junk was going to cost 120,000 renminbi. If you can't afford to buy anything, you'll have to wait until the next mission at least. Now just rent it. After the car was packed up, Chen Chen asked everyone to put on their gear, strap on their ammunition belts, and insert their bulletproof plates. This was to allow the others to adapt to the rhythm of armored combat, and also to train their physical strength. Carrying more than 30 kilograms of equipment on your body is equivalent to a large sandbag. After training for a month or 2, your physical strength can be greatly improved. After everything was ready, getting in the car and setting off was a piece of cake. The air conditioning of this Hilux had broken down long ago, and the 4 of them were soaked in sweat in less than half an hour. Chen Chen also took the opportunity to observe the reactions of others. Shi Dakai is as stable as ever. He might actually have some talent as a sniper. Bao Qi was obviously very upset, but he was able to suppress his emotions. However, it was possible that after a long period of suppression, there would be a crazy backlash. As for Li Bang, he seemed to take it totally unimportant, as if this little bit of hardship had not even touched his threshold. Fine. Chen Chen nodded secretly. The quality of this team is uneven, and each member has his or her own characteristics. But fortunately, the team members complement and integrate with each other in a peculiar way, and actually form a usable combat unit. In that case, there is no need to consider changing players to strengthen training. Train them to death, just according to the standard of the devil month of the brigade in my previous life. I don't believe that there is anyone in this world who can't be trained. Chen Chen showed an evil smile on his face. Bao Qi glanced at it inadvertently and shuddered inexplicably. He quickly turned his head away and clenched his PKMS. He probably didn't know that the most comfortable days of his life would soon be over. Half an hour later, the pickup truck arrived at Menglang Zen Temple in the northeast of Menka. The monks here had received the news in advance and were already waiting at the gate of the temple. Looking at their respectful expressions from afar, Bao Qi couldn't help feeling a little proud. Hey, the monks in this area have always been arrogant. Now it's our turn to show off our power, right? He was just about to tell a few people the story of the night cruise, but at this moment, Chen Chen's face suddenly changed. Parking. Number 1, turn the car sideways. Everyone get out of the car and spread out the guard. Number 2, set up the machine gun at the hood in tire position. Aim at the main gate of the temple. Number 3, occupy the commanding heights in the southwest. Something is wrong. There must be an ambush here. The 3 men moved very slowly. Even after getting off the car, Bao Qi stood there for more than 10 seconds to adjust his bulletproof vest. This extremely unprofessional action naturally attracted Chen Chen's scolding, but fortunately, their enemy was even more unprofessional. He did not take advantage of the opportunity when the 4 men got off the car to launch an attack, but fired the first shot belatedly after Bao Qi had raised his gun. Obviously, their original intention was to ambush, but they were too concerned about the perfection of the ambush, or in other words, they were too focused on achieving absolute surprise. This gave the Dongfeng Corps an opportunity. The pickup truck that was lying sideways became a temporary shelter. The complex engine compartment blocked the bullets fired at Bao Qi. Shi Dakai also took this opportunity to occupy the commanding heights and began to report the situation to Chen Chen. Number 4, the enemies are inside the temple. One of them is behind the door, and the other is at the window. They took the monks hostage. No, they used them as cover. These people should be the remaining bandits from Wan Hanai camp. They want to take revenge on Menglang Temple. No, they just wanted to ambush us. Chen Chen hid behind the rear wheel of the pickup truck and did not rashly stick his head out to observe. The 2 sides were less than 200 meters apart, and the other side had the advantage of cover. At this time, the best solution was to throw a few smoke bombs to block the other side's observation field of view. But the problem was that the 4-man team did not have such tactical equipment at all. The enemy's gunfire began to sound continuously, but Bao Qi did not fight back. What are you doing? Chen Chen shouted loudly. Chen number 4, I can't shoot. There are monks all over the temple entrance. I will definitely hit them. Chen Chen couldn't help but feel angry. He really wanted to say, those monks have nothing to do with you. But when the words came to his lips, he swallowed them back. Don't say anything that will affect unity. Chen Chen absolutely did not believe in Buddhism, but at the same time, he was also very clear about its status in northern Myanmar society. It is very likely that the other three people would not believe it either. But not believing it and letting them shoot at the monks are two different matters. If we have to give an example, asking them to ignore the safety of the monks and open fire is probably the same as asking the Chaos On people to open fire at the ancestral tablets in the ancestral hall. This is a last resort whenever there are other solutions. So, in all fairness, their hesitation is understandable. But such excusable circumstances can be fatal on the battlefield. The enemy's firepower was fierce, and their ODA could not be established at all. Bao Qi retreated under the hood, and Shirdakai had been pressed to the reverse slope, so he could not stick his head out to observe. What's more serious is that they don't even know how many people the other side has. Once the other side gets close with its firepower advantage, the advantage of the four-man team's bulletproof equipment will be severely reduced. At a distance of 200 meters, the probability of hitting a headshot with a rifle without an optical sight is about the same as winning the lottery. But once you get within 50 meters, hitting a headshot is as easy as eating or drinking. Very dangerous. Chen Chen's brows were tightly furrowed. He lowered his body and tried to observe through the bottom of the car, but the place where they parked happened to have a gentle uphill slope, and he could not see anything from his angle. Number 2. You must shoot to suppress them. Otherwise we may all die here. We die or they die. You choose. Chen Chen roared at Bao Qi, who gritted his teeth, then quickly stood up and fired a volley of bullets at the entrance of the Buddhist temple. There is no accuracy at all. And just as he stood up, concentrated bullets rushed over and hit Bao Qi's bulletproof plate with a bang. He immediately fell backwards, and Chen Chen quickly rushed over to grab him and pulled him back to the back of the car. Bao Qi was breathing heavily, and Chen Chen pulled his hand away to check the bullet hole. Fortunately, the bullet was only 1 centimeter away from the edge of the bulletproof plate. Keep hidden, don't stick your head out. Bao Qi nodded somewhat blankly, then leaned against the tire. The bullets were still flying, and now they had no way of organizing a counterattack. The other side was very professional. Although they only had rifles, they still exerted sustained suppression. Our side was completely trapped. Now, even if the other three had overcome their psychological barriers, they would have no chance of fighting back. How could this battle turn out like this? If I could get off the car a few seconds faster, if Bao Qi could shoot more decisively, if Dakai could destroy the firing point, if I didn't have to take care of them, but could take the initiative immediately, but unfortunately there is no if on the battlefield. Yeah, wait, where is Li Bang? Chen Chen turned around abruptly. He clearly remembered that he dragged Li Bang to the back of the car when he got off. Where was he now? Number one, report your location. Chen Chen shouted anxiously into the radio. He had already made the worst plan in his mind. Although he was wearing a bulletproof vest, no one could guarantee that the bullet would not fly to his face. But at this moment, a loud noise suddenly came from the direction of the Buddhist temple. Boom! Chen Chen was startled and subconsciously quickly looked out from the rear of the car to observe the situation. There was no doubt that the grenade exploded. The enemy's suppressive firepower paused for a moment, and Chen Chen had no time to remind Bao Qi. He couldn't react anyway. He stood up quickly, raised his gun from the backseat window, and fired a short burst of shots at the smoke at the temple entrance. I don't know if anyone was hit. In fact, even if they were to hit him, they should have hit the monks first. To be honest, at this moment, he still felt a little guilty. After all, in the training he received in his previous life, the mainstream idea was to prioritize the safety of the hostages, rather than reporting to his superiors recklessly like the Russians did, saying 5 out of 10 enemies don't have guns. But his guilt didn't last long, because soon, the second grenade exploded. Moreover, it passed through the window and exploded directly inside the Buddhist temple. Amidst the dull sound, an enemy with a gun appeared in Chen Chen's sight, exposing a perfect angle for being shot. Chen Chen pulled the trigger unconsciously, firing a shot that was sure to hit the target, but the gun missed. At this moment, Chen Chen was so surprised that he wanted to check the 81 bar in his hand immediately, but he did not do so. Instead, he quickly fired another shot and hit the enemy's right leg. The enemy fell to the ground, and as he fell, the third grenade exploded. Number 2, cover. Number 3, destroy the firing point. Chen Chen gave a brief instruction, then crawled forward in a low posture and found a new shooting position. The third grenade forced out more enemies. Chen Chen called out their names one by one and killed 2 of them in an instant. At this time, he also saw Li Bang about 100 meters in front of him. He was half crouching under the courtyard wall outside the temple, which was less than 1 meter high, and was still throwing grenades at the temple gate. Perfect cover. Chen Chen didn't have time to think about it. He sprinted to close the distance, then rushed into the yard in the gap between the 2 grenade explosions and stood against the wall on the right side of the main gate. The PKMS gunfire rang out, and the main entrance of the temple was completely blocked. Shirdakai also found an opportunity and destroyed the firing point at the window on the left side of the temple. The situation was finally reversed. Number 1. Adjust your position and throw a grenade into the dangerous corner from the left window. Got it, throw it away immediately. Don't say immediately. Give me a countdown. I want a synchronized attack. Number 2. Number 3. Cease fire immediately after throwing the grenade now. Clear. Receive. Got it. 3, 2, 1, throw. After hearing the voice on the radio, Chen was silent for a few seconds. Then he flashed and appeared at the main entrance of the Buddhist temple. At this point in time, the enemies who were forced out of the dangerous corner by the grenade were moving towards Chen Chen's simple corner. 2 men, 1 long burst. The bullet penetrated the enemy's body from behind. Chen Chen did not fire again, but directly flashed back behind the wall. At the same time, the grenade exploded. A 5-second delay fuse is just enough. Boom! With a loud bang, Chen Chen cut the corner to the left and completed the inspection of the simple corner on the right. Then he cut into the dangerous corner and shot and killed the armed enemy who was struggling on the ground. Room 1 of the building is cleared. Number 1. Move forward and join me immediately. Aim your gun at a simple corner of the room. I'll cover your back. Chen Chen held up his gun from the window, and Li Bang moved quickly after hearing the order. 10 seconds later, the two met in the room and then covered the other two people one by one as they entered the temple. Prepare to clean the back room of the temple. Chen Chen pointed his gun at the narrow door of the back room and was about to instruct Li Bang to throw a grenade. But at this moment, a gunman came out of the door holding a monk hostage. You, put down your weapons. Bang! The gunman's head exploded. Chen Chen didn't wait for him to finish his words. It wasn't me who killed people. It was the bandits, only 8. There are only 8 of them. The monk lying on the ground spoke with difficulty, but Chen Chen did not listen. Instead, he directed the team to continue cleaning the back room. There was indeed no one inside. It was completely empty. Looking back at this time, the temple hall was like hell. There were corpses all over the ground and blood flowing everywhere. The brains of the corpses shot by Chen Chen even splattered onto the face of the Yiksha statue, making it look particularly hideous and terrifying. Bao Qi was still a little dazed. Sure, Dakai was as calm as ever, but Li Bang seemed to be nonchalant at this moment. Good grenade throw. What do you think? It was the bandits from Wan and I who killed them, not me. Li Bang answered calmly, paused for a moment, and added, if I don't throw the grenade, they won't survive when we die. Very good. Chen Chen patted Li Bang's shoulder in appreciation, and the latter smiled and said, I learned this from Brother Chen. Now don't talk nonsense, I didn't teach you that. Chen Chen's expression became serious, and he continued. Number 3, go to the window and stand guard. Number 1 and number 2, follow me to rescue people. Of course, it was not only the bandits who were injured in this sudden battle. 3 monks in the temple were lying on the ground motionless, and at least 5 or 6 were struggling. Chen Chen ordered Li Bang and Bao Qi to move all the injured together. He didn't care about any secondary injuries. There was no such thing as first aid on the battlefield. After checking the injuries, those who could not be saved were thrown aside, and those who did not need saving were thrown aside. In the end, only 3 people were left with gunshot wounds. Chen Chen bandaged them skillfully to stop the bleeding and completed the treatment in 10 minutes. They were lucky, as all of them had non-fatal penetrating wounds. This was actually a bit redundant, because the unlucky ones were already dead on the ground. There were 3 dead and 7 injured. There were only 20 monks in the Zen temple, so it was a heavy loss. The monk who spoke first said to Chen Chen with trembling lips, Azura hell Azura. Chen Chen rolled his eyes. Save your energy. How can you call an ambulance in this place? The monk opened his mouth and finally answered. Menka, call Chuanqing Hospital and they will send someone. Where's the phone? Behind number 2 call. Chen Chen immediately gave the order, and Bao Qi finally came to his senses at this time. He quickly ran to the back room to call for emergency assistance. At the same time, Chen Chen also began to interrogate the monk on the ground, or the abbot. Who are these people? Why did they come here? Chen Chen asked. They are bandits from Wan and I, and they are here to kill you. After you beat Wan and I, they had nowhere to go, so they came to us. The answer was exactly what Chen Chen and his group had guessed before. But the question was, why were Wan Hinai's bandits not in the camp? Your intelligence said that there were only 20 people in the Wan and I camp. We killed 24 of them. How come there are still 8 here? Why are they not in the camp? Where did they go? The abbot lying on the ground coughed twice and replied weakly. We don't really know how many there are. 20 is just a rough estimate. However, these 8 people, I heard from them that they seem to have returned from Dakali. They're out on business. They left a month ago and just came back yesterday. We ran into each other. Good luck. Chen Chen thought secretly. These 8 people should be the best players in Wan and I camp, which can be seen from their continuous suppression tactics. If they were also in the camp at that time, our attack might not have been so smooth. Now that we are eliminating them in batches, the difficulty has been reduced a lot. But, Tachalek? What are they doing in Tachalek? Chen Chen continued to ask. I don't know. I really don't know, but I heard from the leader that they plan to go to Munka later. The bandits went to Munka? Was it to save their own lives? Or did they have a reason to go? Clean up the body and search it. Chen Chen turned around and gave orders, then cross-examined the abbot several times. And only after making sure that he was not lying did he finally relax his vigilance against him a little. Theoretically speaking, with so many monks having died, it is impossible for them to actively cooperate with the bandits. But the human heart is unpredictable. Who knows? Let's talk about money. Chen Chen didn't intend to get entangled with them for too long, so he directly told them the purpose of his visit. The money is ready, but they have taken it all. You can search for it yourself. If you are willing, you can become a Shura under the Buddha's seat and enter the Minglang Zen temple for worship. If there is such a thing in the future, we will ask you to take action directly. Hearing this, Chen Chen couldn't help but be a little surprised. Is this to establish a long-term cooperative relationship with me? You don't blame us for killing people? Born in the morning and dying in the evening. The world is full of suffering. Being born here is like a hunting ground for Azuras. So what if you kill people? Who doesn't kill people? What's the difference between using guns, money, power, and superstition? It's better to kill quickly than not to kill. You kill quickly, you can be called Shura. Chen Chen was confused. He felt that the abbot's Buddhist teachings might have gone astray. But after he said this, he could not refute that northern Myanmar was truly magical, and the religions that had been nurtured were all unique. Let's talk about it later. You guys are paying too little. Chen Chen answered without comment, and the abbot said no more. He was not shot, but was hit by an offensive grenade at close range, and his internal organs should be unable to bear it. However, internal bleeding should not occur. Based on Chen Chen's experience, he will most likely survive. The abbot started to recite scriptures, and Chen Chen stood up. At this time, Li Bang and Bao Qi had also completed the search. Chen number 4, the money has been found. More than 10,000. There seem to be hundreds of thousands here. So many. Chen Chen quickly took the money from Bao Qi. Sure enough, they were all US dollars. Although the denominations were not consistent, judging from the thickness, they were directly over 100,000. That's strange. I used to think that the cash and property reserves of Wan and I camp were too small. Now it seems that they gave all the money to this team of 8 people. What was it used for? What were they going to dackily for? There seemed to be something wrong here. However, the bandits in Wan and I have been officially declared wiped out, so it is impossible to ask about them. Just lock in the money, pack up the spoils, and prepare to retreat. Chen Chen gave the order decisively. Receive. The other 3 answered at the same time. There's a car in the backyard. It's their car. Please drive away. The abbot added one more sentence in a very friendly manner, and it seemed that he really wanted to win over Chen Chen. Thank you very much. Chen Chen answered sincerely, and after thinking for a moment, he took out a stack of money from his purse and placed it in front of the abbot, but did not say anything else. This is not about being a pushover, but about seeking peace of mind for myself. He didn't know whether he had beaten the 3 monks to death, but leaving the money behind made it clear whether he had done so or not. After walking out of the gate, the 4 of them turned to the backyard. When Chen Chen saw the car parked there, the word fuck came out of his mouth almost uncontrollably. Fuck, warrior.